about 3 o'clock in the morning. John Hudson is just getting home from a night out.
He lived in a trailer park on the south end of Colorado Springs.
And all of a sudden, he notices his back porch light is on.
When he looked out the back door, he saw somebody laying on the steps.
Really?
And he's a little bit irritated because, he wants to get to bed.
Come on. Hey, man, you gotta do this. Too late.
And to his horror, there's a woman covered in blood, and her eyes are wide open.
Oh, my God.
He runs to call 911, but it's too late.
In the days of 1975, I'd been employed as a policeman for 2 years. I was 27 years old. I was working the west side of the city of Colorado Springs as a sector officer. You're assigned to a specific geographic zone within the city.
Dispatch to all units. We have a possible 1099 on South Wasatch. All units in District 7, please respond.
In 1975, a homicide was at 1099, but it wasn't in my part of town, so I wasn't permitted to go there. I wanted to go there so bad I could taste it.
Report of a female victim discovered. I repeat, all units in District 7, please respond.
When I heard that call that night, I had no clue, nor did anyone else, that it would become one of the most infamous cases in the history of Colorado Springs.
Within minutes, investigators respond to the trailer park at 1000 South Wasatch.
It's an older area, south of downtown.
The area would be considered somewhat run down.
Hey, thank you. Detective Smith, good to see you.
Officer, so what are we looking at here?
The detective assigned to the case was Lou Smith, and he responded to that scene.
It's a bad one. In fact, it's probably one of the worst I've ever seen.
Show me.
It's right.
Smith was a brilliant detective. He got more confessions than anybody. They couldn't have found a better guy to pursue this case than Lou Smith.
Oh, my God.
Smith looks at this victim. She's a white female in her early 20s. She's covered in blood, and she has this gaping neck wound.
Her hair was matted in blood and dirt, and there was blood all over the porch. This was a brutal attack, very savage.
Look at those handprints.
The blood marks on the door frame indicate that she was approximately 2 inches away from ringing the bell. Would that have mattered? No, it wouldn't have. She would not have survived that injury if there was a surgeon living in that trailer.
Is any purse or ID found?
No, sir.
Okay, let's expand the search here and get a good canvas going. Now let's get the coroner down here and move the body. Nobody else needs to see that.
Yes, sir. Also, Assistant District Attorney Chuck Heim, he's asking to see you.
Great, send him over.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
I had met Chuck Heim and worked with him on many occasions after that event. I found him to be one of the finest prosecutors I've ever seen.
Hey, Chuck.
If he is your adversary, you're dealing with a king cobra.
Let's see what we got going on here.
All right.
It was office policy that the assistant DA be notified of any homicide that occurred within the 4th Judicial District. My role was to coordinate our office with the Colorado Springs Police Department and work with the different detectives on anything that they might need.
Pardon the interruption, gentlemen. We just found a significant amount of blood.
Let's go, Chuck.
The investigators follow a trail of blood to where it begins, 50 yards away.
This must be where the attack happened. And look at these tire tracks.
Looks like there must be a getaway car.
It's likely she steps out of that car, either already wounded or is attacked outside the car. She then tries to seek help, and the perpetrator flees in the car in question.
Let's rope this place off and look for a murder weapon.
Will do.
You said the trailer owner is the one that called us in?
Yes, sir. John Hudson is his name. Last I saw him, he was sitting on the steps on his front porch.
Okay.
He's the last person to see her before the police got there and started their investigation.
Is it possible that she knew him?
John, I'm Detective Smith. I understand this trailer is yours.
Yeah, I don't even want to go back inside. I feel sick.
I understand.
He's 28 years of age. He is very, very distressed.
Could you walk me through your night?
I had just gotten home when I saw her on the steps. I thought some drunk or bum had passed out. Then I saw all the blood.
You know her? You ever see her before?
No, sir. I know everyone in this trailer park, and she ain't one of them.
I asked Mr. Hudson, have you seen any suspicious activity this evening, or seen anybody in the area that you've not seen before?
Now that you mention it, when I was on my way out, I heard this weird clanking noise, and here's this guy riding a bicycle with a busted pedal. Just odd for someone to be out here that late at night.
People don't have to be instructed on what looks suspicious. You just feel it. It's human nature.
Did you get a good look at him?
Yeah, he wasn't going real fast. Young fella, white t-shirt and jeans, curly hair.
Okay, John. We'll get in touch with you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Poor kid.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. The sun should be showing our face here in about half an hour or so. So let's...
And he heard a clanking noise. When he looked, it was a young guy on a bicycle.
There he is. White t-shirt, blue jeans, and a clanking pedal. It's the middle of the night. You're out here riding a bike?
Hey, kid, get over here.
Right away, you're suspicious of this guy. He was seen prior to the murder, and now he's seen after the body has been found. We need to talk to him and find out what he can tell us about this.
What's going on?
What are you doing out here, son? What's your name?
Alex Calzado. I was just on my way to get some beer.
You went out to get a beer at this hour?
Mr. Calzado is nervous, and he's acting oddly, and his body language is very resistive.
Is it because he's involved in this murder? Could be.
Look, man, I don't want any trouble. I'll just get out your way.
Sit tight.
So Lou calls the police headquarters and said, run this guy's name for me and see what you can tell me. And the dispatcher came back right away.
We've got an A. Calzado listed here, active warrant for assault with a deadly weapon.
What type of weapon?
A knife.
You're not going anywhere, kid.
So Alex now has even more explaining to do than he had 2 minutes ago. Who are you, Alex? And what the hell are you doing here?
Oh, my God.
Lou Smith's assigned to investigate the violent homicide of a young female who is unidentified. And a suspicious person, Alex Calzado, has been observed in the area.
Not so fast.
He's wanted on a warrant involving the use of a knife. And he's brought into police headquarters for further investigation.
I was with my buddy Jose all night. The only time I left was to get more beer. I swear.
Alex tells Smith that he has no knowledge of a killing. He didn't kill anybody.
So you're telling me you went on a 5 a.m. beer run right next to a murder scene?
It's the truth. You can ask my friends. You can ask the store clerk.
Check it out.
Well, you want to look into his alibi, so Lou did that.
Checks out.
And that alibi checked out. He had been home all night with his friends.
The gas station is where he was buying beer, and it's open 24 hours a day, and the clerk remembers him and remembers the timeline. So he's dismissed as a suspect.
All right. Get him out.
So Mr. Alex Calzado is arrested on a warrant for assault with a deadly weapon, but he's not involved in this killing.
Detective Smith, we're ready for you down at the morgue.
Thanks. Chuck, go for a ride.
Let's do it.
Hoping the autopsy will produce a new lead, the investigators head down to the morgue to talk to Dr. Urich.
Hey, Doc.
How are you?
You making any progress here?
I think I may have found a few things that'll interest you. Take a look. Cause of death was that gash there. Severed the carotid artery and she bled out.
She had the deep stab wound in the left side of her neck, like somebody tried to cut her throat.
Any idea what type of knife they did?
It's hard to say. Whoever did it knew what they were doing, though. The placement of that cut is almost strategic.
He also said that he found 4 additional stab wounds in her back.
Attack from the back? They didn't see it coming.
I'd say that's a safe conclusion.
Dr. Urich finds defensive wounds in her left hand. She tried to stop the blade at some point during this confrontation.
Also, you should know there's some signs of sexual activity.
So you think she was raped?
Couldn't say for sure.
There were semen traces on her pants. Does that mean they were placed there at the time this occurred? There's no way to know that. They were present. That's all Dr. Urich can say.
Hey, Doc.
Oh, one other thing. I found this in her front pocket.
He was unable to find any type of identification, but he did find one golden key in her jeans pocket.
There's no telling what this key opens. Hopefully this will lead us somewhere, because so far we have nowhere to go.
I think we got something here.
We have a dead girl whose identity is unknown. It's not only a whodunit, it's a who is it.
Hey, you got any witnesses?
Stodgy at best. I'm still asking around, but hey, Lou, how's your case coming along?
When Detective Smith returned to the police department, he met with two other detectives who were also working homicide cases.
Not so good. I got a Jane Doe and I got a trailer park full of people that want answers.
It's a very common thing in homicide investigations for detectives to share information. I always tried to learn as much as I could without being obnoxious about it or even obvious. I listened and paid attention.
Can you believe we got 3 people killed in less than 10 days?
That's terrible.
That's extremely unusual in 1975 in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Concern begins to build that there's something more to this.
Keep me posted.
You bet. Excuse me, Detective Schmidt? I couldn't help but overhear just now. Do you think these murders are connected?
It's too soon to tell. The motives are all different. We have drugs, we have robbery, we have a possible sexual assault.
Oh, wow.
When Smith has these conversations about these other 2 killings, there's no real connection to them other than the level of violence and the proximity of days. Could this be the same guy doing these crimes for different reasons? Yeah, it could.
If that is so, we got a serial killer on our hands.
A serial killer is a different breed of cat. He considers what he's doing over a period of time. It's not a single event, it's a series of events.
We need to find him before he strikes again.
Sounds like you got your work cut out for you.
Can you keep an ear out on patrol?
Oh, I will, sir. You can count on that.
Oh, thanks, Kenda.
Lou Smith had an innate ability to reach people, never objected to the fact I was a rookie. He was very accepting. You're one of the brotherhood now. And I always liked him. He's a remarkable guy.
Back in his office, Detective Smith tries another tactic for soliciting new information.
You've got a lot of pressure on you when you're assigned a case like this. So it would not be uncommon to then call a press release.
Okay, this should do it. Let's get some copies and get KOA on the line.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
When I was in television, we would be talking to the police department several times a day on the phone. Their information officer would, set up an interview with us with one of the detectives.
We are very careful when we release information to the press.
We're asking anyone who may have any information to call the Colorado Springs Police Department immediately.
Detective!
The only information we'd provide about this girl is her physical appearance. How tall is she? What does she weigh? What color's her hair? What's color her eyes? And her clothing. That's it.
Detective, do you believe she was murdered? Do you have any suspects?
That's all I have for right now.
Detective!
As news of the murder spreads, the CSPD is inundated with tips from the public.
There's a natural built-in problem where people are absolutely convinced that it's their cousin, it's their sister, it's their aunt, it's their lifelong friend, and you wind up chasing down a number of false leads.
Okay, well, I'm glad you found her. Take care now.
Any luck?
I'm afraid another dead end.
Detective, I've got a woman up front, says she needs to talk to you.
What is this today? The ninth walk-in? Oh, I better go see if I can roll this one out. Could you sit in my office?
Yes, sir.
Good.
One of the tips that came in was a gal named Jenny Erickson.
Hi there. What brings you down here today?
I heard about that girl who was killed the other day.
No, the one?
I live right around the corner from there, and you see, that very same day I saw a man walking, and his shirt was covered in blood.
Do you know who he is?
She's seen this individual before, is close by to the area where the victim was found, and she's able to point out the apartment he lives in. Well, somebody covered in blood in the crime scene area would certainly work. So they're very interested in who this guy is.
And you're sure that it was the same day?
Positive.
We'll check it out. Thanks for coming down, Jimmy.
He either has to be part of this or he's not. He has to be cleared or arrested, one of the two.
So Smith went over there, knocked on the door.
Yes?
And sure enough, this individual's got a cut over his eye.
Sir, I'm Detective Smith. Do you mind if I come in and ask you a few questions?
Guess so.
Well, could he have gotten that cut in a fight with our victim? Very well could have.
Inside, Smith sits down with 31-year-old James Conley.
What's all this about?
Mr. Conley, we have reports of you seen in the same area where a murder took place. You were covered with blood. Can you explain it?
Mr. Connolly reports that he was recently in a motorcycle accident and it adversely affected his equilibrium. He has great difficulty in walking and now he has to use a cane. But he went out the other day to buy some beer at the gas station he frequents, and he had forgotten his cane.
I took a nasty fall on the way. I split my eye open, damn near bled through my shirt.
I see.
Now, any policeman knows that a head wound bleeds profusely. There are many capillaries in your scalp and your forehead, and when you get even a minor injury to your forehead, you are covered in blood, and you look like you're going to die any minute. So that's a very reasonable explanation.
Can anybody verify that?
I suppose the gas station clerk? I bought beer and bandages from him. Actually, I have the receipt. Let me go get that.
I appreciate that.
He needs a cane just to walk. It would be very difficult for someone who has difficulty walking to engage in a physical confrontation with a resistive victim.
Made this purchase at 3:15 p.m.?
Sounds about right.
The timestamp on the receipt told Lou right away that this was much, much earlier in the day than this homicide occurred.
Okay, Mr. Conley. Thank you. Officer?
His timeline doesn't work at all for this murder. His explanation is more than reasonable, and the officers decide that Connolly has no promise whatsoever.
Back at the station, it's all hands on deck to wade through the endless flood of tips.
Excuse me, Detective. There's a woman on the phone for you. She says she's your Jane Doe's roommate.
Another one of these tips?
You're going to want to take this phone call. She's online, too.
It's always difficult to take anyone seriously when they call in to report they know who it is, when you've already had 100 people do that, and 100 people were wrong about it.
Detective Smith?
I know it's her. I know it's my roommate. I haven't seen her in days.
Okay, slow down. What's your name?
Pamela Roost. Listen, she always comes home eventually. She carries her apartment key with her everywhere.
What did you say?
It's a gold key, a single gold key. She always keeps it in her front jean pocket.
This is very specific information that was never released to the public. So here we have someone who knows something that nobody knows, that the person carries a key in their pocket. Well, my. After hundreds of people, we may have found the magic one. Lou Smith has been assigned the gruesome homicide of a young female who is yet unidentified.
Cause of death was that gash there.
But now, finally, after hundreds of tips, we have a person that seems to be extremely promising.
I know it's my roommate.
She knows things that no one else would know that wasn't associated with the case.
After finally catching a potential break, investigators rush to meet the tipster, Pamela Roost.
Now, Pamela, you told me that your roommate carried her apartment key in her pocket.
Yes, always.
This look familiar?
That's it.
It's very important to get the identification as quickly as possible. And once you've got that, you have something that will start you down the right path.
May I?
Please.
Smith inserts the key in that door, and it unlocks it.
He knew then that he probably just identified his Jane Doe victim.
But Smith still needs her to positively ID the body.
I'm going to show you a photo. Can you do that?
That's got to be just very traumatic and very stressful and, you know, the kind of thing where your stomach's churning.
Oh my God. That's her. That's Karen.
It's a huge step up in this investigation. Her name is Karen Grammer.
What can you tell me about her?
She was just so lovely.
Karen Grammer was your typical 18-year-old starting out life. She was adventurous. She was kind of a free spirit. She liked poetry, and people liked her.
She says she came here to find work in the restaurant business. She's a waitress by trade, and we met and became roommates and became friends.
She has family here. We'd like to notify them.
No, they're mainly in Florida. God, her brother's gonna be devastated. They were very close.
Karen Grammer was, in fact, the sister of Kelsey Grammer, who went on to become a very famous actor. Their father was lost to them when they were young.
So they leaned on each other. They were close.
Who could have done this to Karen? She didn't have any enemies in the world. Everyone loved her.
Well, that's what we're trying to find out. Now, when is the last that you saw her?
She said that Karen works the evening shift at a seafood restaurant, and the last time she saw her, she went to work, and she never came back.
I didn't know what to think.
And that was the night of the murder. So we know that Karen Grammer was at the seafood restaurant the night she was killed.
Do you have any idea where this seafood restaurant is?
It's over on Academy.
The seafood restaurant is several miles across town from where she was discovered. So how did she get from the seafood restaurant to the place where she's found in a relatively short amount of time? How'd that happen?
I noticed she wasn't wearing glasses in the photograph that you showed me. Did you find them?
Why do you ask?
Her roommate said that she was almost as blind as a bat, that she wore very thick glasses.
Well, those glasses were never found. And then the question becomes, where are they?
Thank you, Pamela. You've been a great help.
With no time to waste, Smith heads over to the restaurant where Karen worked.
Did she show up for a shift? Did she work all day? We can find out a lot from the people that she worked with.
Excuse me, sir. You work here?
I do. I'm the manager. How can I help you?
Smith meets the manager of the place, and he remembers Karen being there that night.
He was a little annoyed that Karen never showed up for the rest of her shifts.
Karen may not have a job with us much longer. We haven't seen her since.
He doesn't realize what's happened to Karen Grammer.
I'm sorry to tell you, sir, but Karen's been killed.
Oh, my God.
He's incredibly distressed and immediately willing to do anything he can do to help.
You know, Tyler worked that night. Maybe he can help you.
Thank you.
The cashier is Tyler Harrington.
Hi, Tyler. I'm Detective Schmidt.
Tyler had just overheard the conversation that Karen is dead, and he's very distressed.
Oh, my God. I didn't think those guys would actually hurt her.
And Smith said, what did you say? What guys are you talking about?
What have I done?
He says the night she was killed, 3 guys came in here and one of them pulled a gun on me and tried to rob the place.
I had already emptied the cash register and I had nothing, so they left.
But then he saw them approach Karen and start talking to her.
God.
So Smith's immediate thought is, could this have been a robbery gone wrong and Karen Grammer was collateral damage? That could very well be true. We're going to have to find out.
You didn't see it coming.
Lou Smith is investigating the violent death of Karen Grammer. He encounters a cashier at a seafood restaurant where she was employed, who says that an attempted robbery took place. It's fairly clear to Smith this could be connected to this homicide.
After countless dead ends, Detective Smith believes 17-year-old Tyler Harrington might be the key witness he's been searching for.
Now, wait a minute. Are you telling me that you saw the suspects talking to Karen after they just tried to rob you at gunpoint?
Yes. Yes.
All of a sudden, Tyler Harrington has provided him with what is likely to be the prime suspects in this case.
What I need you to do now is start from the beginning. What happened?
It was getting time for me to lock up, and these 3 guys walked in. Excuse me, we're closed.
Not anymore. Give me all your money.
And one of the males opened his coat and showed him a gun.
I'm not playing. Give me all your money now.
I swear I don't have anything. I swear.
Tyler said, the register's already been cleaned out. There's nothing here.
So it's a botched robbery. There's no people to rob. There's no anything to rob.
How did you get them to leave?
I told them I had someone waiting outside for me, and they got spooked, I guess.
Well, did you?
No, but I didn't know Karen was out there.
Tyler says he looks out the window and sees these guys talking to Karen.
Now, maybe these three guys assumed that Karen was the one waiting for Tyler. Did they decide that Karen Grammer is a witness to their attempted robbery and make a decision to take her?
Why didn't you report
I didn't want to get in trouble. I was supposed to have already locked the door. If I would have did that, man, none of this even would have happened.
What happened to Karen is not your fault, son.
He was just too scared to say anything to anybody. Now, at his age, that's understandable. There's a fear factor there that's unexplainable to somebody who's an adult and understandable to somebody who's a kid.
Now, what I need you to do is try to remember everything about these individuals.
Right. Well, there was three black guys. Definitely military.
Why did you say that?
He had the impression that they were military, as they had short, high and tight haircuts, the military-style cut, and one of them was wearing a field jacket.
Okay, Tyler. If you remember anything else, call me. Understand?
Yes, sir.
So now, going from 0 to 60 miles an hour in this case, we now know we're looking for three black males with military haircuts. When Smith returned to the station, he encounters Detective Burns and Detective Adams, and they're discussing their investigations into their homicides. So they all sit down, because now Smith's got something to say.
Sounds like we're looking for a couple of military guys. Black males, armed.
Yeah, that's interesting. The witnesses gave me the same description in my case.
No kidding.
We've got three cases now with seemingly different motives, but they could always be connected. You keep that in the back of your mind.
What are the details?
Victim is a 29-year-old male.
Smith learns that the first victim was identified as Daniel Van Loan, a cook at the Four Seasons Hotel.
11 days before Karen Grammer is murdered, Daniel Van Loan was found on the side of the road by a patrolman just a mile from where he worked. He had a scarf tied over his face and had been shot in the temple.
And only 3 days before Grammer's death, Winifred Prophet, a soldier stationed at Fort Carson, was also murdered under mysterious circumstances.
Detective Adams says that Winifred Prophet was found stabbed to death at Prospect Lake.
They stabbed him in the chest with an Army-issue bayonet.
People in the area said they saw a group of black males in a green vehicle cruising around.
Any idea who that might be?
We're not sure, but we may all be looking after the same guys.
You know, I'm starting to think the same thing.
They start thinking, do we have serial killers on our hands?
If they are the same guys, they are incredibly dangerous. They kill without compassion.
Detective Schmidt, I'm sorry to interrupt. You have a phone call in your office? It's pretty urgent.
Try to say who they were?
No, sir.
Thanks, Kenda. Well, fellas, let's gonna have to circle back on this.
You got it.
Later that day, Detective Smith gets the break he's been looking for.
Detective Smith?
I'm calling from the New Orleans District Attorney's Office. I have a defendant in custody I think you'll be interested in.
He says that he has information about the murder of Karen Grammer in Colorado Springs, and he also knows about the murder of Daniel Van Loan and Winifred Prophet.
You got to be kidding me.
Could this be the key piece of information to catching a serial killer? It most certainly could. Lou Smith is investigating the murder of 18-year-old Karen Grammer, but has learned of two other investigations involving the murder of Daniel Van Loan and Winifred Prophet that are connected.
Think you'll be interested.
A district attorney's investigator in New Orleans says he has a defendant in custody who knows everything about all three murders, and he's willing to trade this information in exchange for leniency.
And Detective Smith knows just the person to help broker a deal.
Hey, Chuck.
Hey. The police department or Lou Smith cannot grant immunity to any witness. It has to come through the district attorney, Chuck Heim.
You know that Grammer case I'm working?
Of course. What's the latest?
You never guess who called me.
Who?
Smith says the New Orleans District Attorney's Office had been tracking an individual through the FBI whose name was Larry Dunn. And what Mr. Dunn wants is immunity from the murder charges.
Lou says, we need to talk to this guy. I said, all right, where is he?
He's in New Orleans.
What do you think he knows?
He said, I think he knows about at least 3 murders. He may have been at them or was told about them by the people that did the killing.
Interesting. Let me just make a quick phone call.
All right, I'm gonna go get back.
Over the next hour, investigator Chuck Heim quickly works out a deal with his boss.
I said, all right, I will give him immunity for anything he has done in the 4th Judicial District if he agrees to give us all the information that he knows about these killings. So we went down on an afternoon flight to New Orleans, and we interviewed him the next morning at the New Orleans House of Detention.
Sure appreciate you giving us a call.
Nice to meet you, fellas. Glad you made the trip. Seems like Dunn's ready to talk.
Let's get in there.
We went in there and shut the door. I looked at him, and I drilled him in the eyes, and he looked like he was dead serious.
Okay. You tell us the truth about these murders, and you agree to testify at trial, we'll give you immunity for all the crimes you've committed in the state of Colorado. Are you interested?
Immunity transactions are conducted with the following caveats. In no uncertain terms. That you need to spill your guts. You need to vomit your information all over this table. And if you leave out one single fact, we're going to burn you to the ground. You on occasion have to make a deal with the devil. It's how this works.
Now, tell me about Daniel Van Loan.
Well, we needed the money, and he seemed like an easy target.
Dunn said that he, another guy named Freddie Glenn, and another guy named Michael Corbett waited for Mr. Van Loan to get off of work.
Daniel Van Loan was a cook. They decided, let's go rob him.
Get him out the car!
What are you doing?
Let's go!
Please help!
Hey, blindfold his ass!
Don't do this!
Get on your knees.
Get on your knees, man! I'm begging you, I got a wife and children!
They shot him in the head.
Check his pockets, man.
Oh, come on, man! 50 cents?
And robbed him of a mere 50 cents and left him in a ditch on the side of the road.
The guy was a bust. He had like 2 quarters on him.
What happened next?
There was that one guy, Winford.
Dunn said they next targeted Winford Prophet, who was a soldier that they all knew. They had arranged a bogus drug deal to lure Winford Prophet to Prospect Lake.
Hey, guys.
Prophet, give me all your money.
What?
There was no deal going down. They didn't have any marijuana. They wanted to rob him.
What are you doing?
That's right, your money.
Freddie, come on, man, please.
Freddie Glenn stabbed him in the chest and then gleefully told people about how lovely it felt when he stuck this bayonet into this guy's chest and felt the bones crunch.
I mean, these guys are animals. It's not that they're trying to get money. Michael Corbett and Freddie Glenn are killing because they like to kill.
I want to talk about Karen Grammer. Why don't we start from the beginning? The night of June 30th.
It was me, Corbett, and Glenn just chilling at the apartment. Glenn got the idea to make a few hits, which is nothing new.
How do you mean?
Larry Dunn said that they were all in the military together out at Fort Carson.
But they were always in trouble. They were robbing fellow soldiers, and they're all together on this evening.
Then Larry Dunn said just prior to leaving the apartment, they each ate a hit of LSD. Sometimes it can make you very violent.
We drove around till we came to that seafood spot.
The one on Academy?
Yeah, that one.
Give me all your money. Give me all your money now.
I swear I don't have anything. I swear.
The place was a bust, so we left. Then we seen that white girl outside.
Karen Grammer.
Yeah, her.
Karen Grammer was standing in exactly the wrong place at exactly the wrong moment.
Hey. How long you been standing out here?
I'm just waiting for my friend to get off work.
She's seen us, bruh. She's seen
Wait,
us.
so what?
Enough of this. You know what? You come in with us. Come on.
Get on me! Help! Help!
Her fate was sealed the moment she crossed paths with these killers. They saw her as somebody that they could kidnap and brutalize, and that's what they wanted.
And they decided to drive back to Freddie Glenn's apartment, and then the sexual assaults started.
They all took turns, sexually assaulting her every way which you can. And that's all I want to say about it.
Now what? What we gonna do with her?
I don't know, man. She's seen our faces.
Yo, we can't let her go, man.
Yo, shut up! Let's get her back in the car and drop her off somewhere.
The initial decision is they're going to just drop her off on the other side of town. They had tied her hands together with a blue scarf, and they had taken off her glasses and put them on the dashboard of the car, so essentially she's riding around with them and can't see anything.
Please don't let them kill me. I'll do anything you want. Please help me.
Don't worry. You'll be all right.
They came across this alley next to a trailer park on the south side of the city, and Dunn says they decided this was a good place to let her go.
Get out of here. Okay, man, let's go.
But according to Larry Dunn, that's when Freddie Glenn had a change of heart.
No, man. She's seen too much.
Glenn goes up behind Karen Grammer
Hold your neck back.
and tells her to tip her head back. He cuts her throat and stabs her several times in the back, and she tries to fight him off, getting a few defensive wounds, but is unsuccessful.
Freddie, what's wrong with you, man? Why? Now! Come on, go!
She is stumbling around, blind, without her glasses, bleeding to death, and they speed away in their car. And she staggers probably toward the light that she sees of a porch light.
To still be alive and crawl along the ground, clawing her way, touching, seeing a door, thinking, maybe I can get some help. That's the hard part, is to know what she went through.
She was able to get to Mr. Hudson's trailer, where she ended up dying.
We have a young girl loses her life for no reason at all.
I think we've heard enough.
Officer.
Larry Dunn agrees to testify against Corbett and Glenn and receives immunity for his involvement in the 3 murders.
This information from Dunn is sufficient to obtain arrest warrants for Freddie Glenn and Michael Corbett.
They tracked down Freddie Glenn and Michael Corbett, arrest both of them, but they both lawyered up. Well, you know what? We don't need you to talk. We got what we need.
There is more than sufficient case here to put them away forever.
Freddie Glenn and Michael Corbett are convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder. They are sentenced to life in prison.
Michael Corbett died in the summer of 2019 in his cell at the age of 64. Freddie Lee Glenn remains locked up in the Colorado State Penitentiary.
Excellent work, everybody.
Yes.
We all played a part. I'm just glad we got justice here.
Here, here.
I was very proud of Colorado Springs Police Department and the Sheriff's Department Lou Smith was the one that really put the frosting on the cake, coordinating this. They did an excellent job starting with nothing and getting people charged.
It was inspiring for me to see the level of competence of the police department. Made me proud to be a policeman.
Just want to congratulate you, sir. Amazing work.
Thanks, Kenda.
It further inspired me to want to get there. I wanted to be one of those homicide detectives. And I was a very fortunate fellow that I was able to do precisely that.
Although her killers were caught, the tragic loss of Karen Grammer will forever haunt those who loved her.
Let me talk about my sister for a second. She graduated at the head of her class, and then she decided to go to Colorado Springs because she had a boy that she liked. She was a terrific kid. She was a wonderful, wonderful person. I miss her all the time.
Karen Grammer was an 18-year-old girl with her whole life in front of her, taken by extreme violence for no reason at all, and killed for the thrill of the killing. The sickest possible form of murder.
It started with dust and silence, a farmhouse outside of Lubbock, Texas, sitting alone beneath a red sunset, wind brushing through wheat fields that hadn't been tended in years. Inside, time had stopped. The kitchen clock was frozen at 9:14 p.m., a single chair overturned, a dinner plate shattered near the counter. What was once home to a family of three was now a mausoleum of questions. On June 17, 1994, 16-year-old Amanda Ray vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail so faint that even seasoned investigators admitted defeat. But 30 years later, that same silence was about to speak. Back then, the summer heat pressed down like punishment. Sheriff deputies combed through the fields, dogs barking in frustration, helicopters circling overhead. Her father, a retired truck driver, stood near the property line, his face sunburned and cracked, whispering her name into the wind as if she could still hear him. The town of Leveland hadn't seen anything like it. One night she'd gone to a friend's party, a rural gathering lit by bonfire and cheap beer. The next morning she was gone, and her old pickup was found abandoned 5 miles away, doors unlocked, keys on the seat, a cassette still playing, a love song, looping endlessly. People whispered. In small-town Texas, whispers can be louder than screams. Rumors painted Amanda as a runaway, others hinted at something darker, an older man, a fight, a secret relationship. But no one could say for sure. When the sheriff's department ran out of leads, they boxed up the evidence, blood-stained fabric, cigarette butts, Polaroids, and buried it in the evidence room. The case faded, like the ink on her missing poster taped to the grocery store window. Only her mother, Lorraine, refused to let go. Every Christmas, she mailed a letter to the sheriff's office, begging for new eyes to look at the old files. Decades passed. Technology changed, faces changed, but memory did not. In 2023, a new cold case task force began scanning through hundreds of unsolved files across Texas. Among them, Amanda Ray. One detective, Jenna Morales, 36 years old, mother of 2, found herself drawn to the yellowed photos. Something about the look in Amanda's eyes, wide, cautious, like she already knew what was coming. Morales reopened the case. The old evidence was shipped to the state crime lab in Austin for reanalysis. DNA technology had come a long way since '94, and that was where everything began to unravel. A partial fingerprint on the truck's door handle matched no one in the family, no one in the system, until 2024. A hit popped up on CODIS. The name, Calvin Briggs. A drifter, small-time mechanic arrested 2 years earlier for burglary in New Mexico. Born and raised in the same county as Amanda Ray. The database didn't lie. Morales froze, staring at the screen. Briggs would have been 25 at the time of her disappearance. He'd lived just 12 miles away. When they tracked him down, he was working at a scrapyard outside of Albuquerque, gray hair, nicotine-stained fingers, and a calmness that felt wrong. Detectives arrived under the pretense of questioning him about a stolen car. They swabbed his cheek for a DNA sample. He didn't protest. He just smiled. "About time," he said. Back in Texas, the results came in. The sample matched a cigarette butt found in Amanda's truck. Probability of match, 99.998%. It was enough to open a homicide file. But something about the evidence still didn't sit right. Morales visited the old Ray farmhouse herself. The walls smelled of dust and ghosts. She stood where the clock had stopped and noticed something no one had written in the reports. Faint markings along the window frame, claw-like scratches, as if someone had tried to escape. The investigation widened. Old neighbors recalled seeing a dark pickup parked along County Road 8 the night Amanda vanished. A local bartender remembered a man with greasy hands and a denim jacket asking if anyone had seen a blonde in a red dress. It matched Amanda's outfit from the night she disappeared. But there were contradictions. Briggs claimed he didn't know her, that he'd never been near the property. Yet in an old photograph from a 4th of July fair in '93, a man who looked just like him stood in the background of Amanda's photo booth snapshot. Coincidence or proof? The media picked it up immediately. 3-decade mystery reopened in West Texas. The story flooded every news outlet. Lorraine Ray, now in her 70s, appeared on television, trembling but composed. "I just want to know," she said softly. "After 30 years, I just want to know what happened to my daughter." Her voice cracked, and the anchor let the silence carry the weight. As the pressure mounted, detectives dug deeper into Briggs's past. He'd worked for a construction company in 1994, repairing barns and fences around the same region. Payroll logs confirmed he'd been on shift near Levelland the week Amanda vanished. But there was something else, an old report of a missing farmhand from that same summer, a young man named Eddie Turner, last seen drinking with Briggs. No one had ever found him either. 2 disappearances, 1 suspect. The task force requested a warrant to search the land Briggs had owned back then, an acre of dry soil behind an abandoned repair shop. Ground-penetrating radar revealed anomalies beneath the dirt. The team began to dig. Under 2 feet of clay, they found fragments of denim, bone, and a silver ring engraved with the letter A. The ring matched the one Amanda's mother had described in her original statement. Morales stood by the edge of the hole as the evidence techs lifted the remains. The silence of the night pressed in heavy, broken only by the whir of generators and the click of cameras. Forensic analysis confirmed the bones were human, female, approximately 16 to 18 years old. DNA matched the old toothbrush from the Ray household. Amanda Ray was finally found. But closure wasn't simple. During interrogation, Briggs denied everything. He insisted the ring had been planted, that someone wanted him gone. When shown the photo of himself at the fair, he smirked and said, "Ain't me." But he looks like he had a good time. His calmness unsettled everyone in the room. Detective Morales didn't believe in coincidences. She pulled every report from 1990 to 1996, cases involving young women gone missing within 50 miles. There were 4, all unsolved. In each, a witness mentioned a man driving a dark pickup with a broken taillight, the same description. Suddenly, Amanda's case didn't feel isolated. It felt like a pattern. Still, prosecutors moved forward. The indictment listed 1 count of murder, 1 count of unlawful restraint, 1 count of evidence tampering. The town of Levelland gathered at the courthouse. Lorraine Ray clutched a framed photo of her daughter as Briggs was led in, handcuffed, eyes vacant. No outburst, no remorse. Just a man who had carried his secret long enough to believe it would stay buried forever. 30 years. 30 years of questions answered by a handful of dirt and bone. Yet, as Morales watched him from the back of the courtroom, she couldn't shake a feeling that something was missing. The evidence was strong, yes, but too clean, as if someone had wanted Briggs found. She remembered his words when arrested. About time. What had he meant? Weeks later, a lab technician discovered a second set of DNA on the ring. Male unknown. Not Briggs, not anyone in the database. Someone else had been there, someone still out there. The news of the match reignited the fire. Reporters swarmed the sheriff's office. Headlines screamed, "Texas 1994 cold case solved." But new DNA raises questions. The public called it closure, but inside the task force they called it something else, a beginning. Morales returned to the evidence locker one last time. She opened the box marked Ray Amanda, 1994. Inside, beneath the photos and the cassette tape, she found something unnoticed for decades. A folded note, faded ink. It read, "If something happens to me, it wasn't him." The handwriting matched Amanda's. The detective stood frozen. The world outside the small evidence room kept moving, phones ringing, printers humming, but in that instant, everything inside her stopped. Someone had crafted a story so convincing that for 30 years, everyone had believed it. The wrong man might be behind bars. And somewhere across the Texas plains, beneath the heavy heat and the same red sunsets, the real ghost of 1994 was still walking free. The note changed everything. Detective Jenna Morales held it like a live wire, the faded blue ink cutting through 3 decades of silence. If something happens to me, it wasn't him. The handwriting had been verified. Amanda's loops, her nervous tilt on the letter I. Authentic. But the him she referred to, who was that? Briggs? A boyfriend? Someone else entirely? Morales knew that kind of note wasn't written by accident. It was a message meant for the future, a breadcrumb left behind in fear. And suddenly the neat puzzle everyone thought was solved began to splinter apart. She ordered a re-examination of every box tied to the case, from evidence bags to taped interviews. Late nights bled into mornings at the precinct, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. She replayed every old VHS interrogation, every witness statement recorded on crackling cassette, and one file caught her attention, a report from 1994 about a neighbor, Harold Mendez, who claimed to have seen a different man near the Ray farmhouse the night Amanda disappeared. The report had been dismissed at the time because Mendez was considered unreliable, known for drinking. But in his description there was a detail no one could have fabricated. The man had been wearing a sheriff's jacket. The words froze Morales' blood. Only law enforcement would have access to that kind of uniform. And in a small county department, that narrowed the list to fewer than 20 men. She began digging into the old rosters, cross-referencing duty logs from the night of June 17, 1994. 3 deputies were off duty that night. One had since died, one had moved to Louisiana, and one, Deputy Roy Tanner, had stayed in the same county for decades, retired just 3 years earlier, living quietly on the outskirts of town. Morales pulled his old personnel file, a decorated officer with commendations for search and rescue work during the 90s, known for his charm and calm under pressure. But there were disciplinary notes too, unreported absences, complaints of inappropriate conduct, each case dismissed for insufficient evidence. Her gut twisted. If Tanner had been involved, it explained the cover-up, the misplaced files, the overlooked fingerprints, the missing witness tapes. That evening, Morales drove out to Tanner's property. The road was gravel, lined with dead cotton plants. His house was a squat, faded structure, porch light flickering. He answered the door in a denim shirt, eyes pale and clear. "Detective," he said, recognizing her immediately. "You're the one digging up ghosts." His voice was steady, polite, but it carried something else underneath, recognition. "I just have a few questions," Morales said, forcing a neutral tone. He invited her in. The house smelled of tobacco and oil. Old badges hung on the wall next to a framed photo of Tanner shaking hands with the sheriff from 1994. When she mentioned Amanda Ray, he didn't flinch. "Terrible thing," he said softly. "We all lost sleep over that one." But his gaze didn't hold hers long. It drifted toward the window, as if checking for someone outside. Morales asked where he'd been the night of June 17th. He said home. Alone, watching the game. No one could confirm it. She noticed something on the mantel, a silver lighter engraved with the initials CB. "Briggs?" she asked. Tanner's eyes flicked up. "Found it at a crime scene once," he said casually. "Thought it looked nice." Morales smiled faintly but said nothing. She left soon after, her pulse hammering. She'd seen the lighter in the old evidence photos from Amanda's truck. How had it ended up here 3 decades later? The next morning, she returned with a warrant. But when they reached the property, Tanner was gone. His truck abandoned behind the barn, engine cold. Inside the house, everything was in order. Coffee cup in the sink, TV still on. But on the table lay a single photograph, a young girl standing beside a patrol car, smiling. On the back, in neat handwriting, "We all keep our secrets." Within hours, a bolo went out. Every agency in Texas was alerted. The media caught wind, calling it a stunning twist in the 1994 cold case. Morales ignored the noise. She was already back in the evidence room, searching for anything that could tie Tanner to Amanda. And then she found it, hidden beneath a mislabeled tape from another case. It was an interview from 1994, conducted by Tanner himself. The camera quality was poor, but the audio was clear. Amanda sat in a chair, nervous, her hands clenched. Tanner's voice came from behind the lens. "You said someone's been following you?" he asked. She nodded. "Do you know who?" A pause. "A man from town. He wears a uniform sometimes. Says he can make things disappear." Tanner chuckled off screen. "You're safe here, Amanda." Morales froze. The date stamp read June 12th, 5 days before Amanda vanished. The tape had never been entered into evidence. She played it again. Amanda's eyes darted toward the camera. "He says if I tell anyone, no one will believe me." Tanner's voice softened, coaxing. "You did the right thing coming to me." The rest of the tape cut to static. Morales knew what that meant. The final piece of truth had been buried by the one man meant to protect her. The next 48 hours turned into a hunt. Reports came in from neighboring towns. Tanner's truck spotted near Midland, then San Angelo, heading south. Every lead ended cold until a highway patrolman called in a sighting near the border. An abandoned motel, dust-covered, door ajar. Inside, the air was stale. On the nightstand lay a service revolver, a badge, and an old photograph. Amanda Ray, smiling at the county fair. But there was no Tanner. Only a note scrawled in shaky handwriting. "I didn't kill her. I just cleaned up the mess." Morales stared at the words under the dim motel light. Cleaned up the mess. That could mean anything. Or everything. If Tanner hadn't killed Amanda, who had? And why had he kept the secret for 30 years? The task force analyzed the motel room. No fingerprints except his own. The revolver was loaded, but unused. The TV was tuned to a static channel, volume muted, the bed unmade. It was like he had vanished into the air he'd polluted for decades. Meanwhile, the DA's office moved cautiously. They had Briggs in custody, but with the new revelations, their case was crumbling. Morales stood before the press, refusing to declare victory. This case is not over, she said firmly. Justice isn't a timeline, it's a persistence. Behind the scenes, the forensic lab made another discovery. That unknown male DNA found on Amanda's ring, it matched a partial profile from another cold case, the unsolved disappearance of a teenage girl in 1992, only 2 counties away. That case had also involved Tanner's jurisdiction. 2 girls, 2 years apart, same pattern, same oversight. But the profile wasn't Tanner's, it belonged to someone else, a man who had worked for the sheriff's department as a civilian contractor during the 90s. His name, Walter Dean Price. Carpenter, fixer, occasional informant. He'd vanished in 1998. His last known employer, Calvin Briggs. It was all connected. Briggs, Tanner, Price, the triangle that had haunted this county for decades. 1 man arrested, 1 missing, 1 dead, or pretending to be. Morales stood in her office staring at a pinboard covered in photos. Amanda's face at the center, 3 strings branching out, 1 to the farmhouse, 1 to the truck, 1 to the motel. In her gut, she knew the story wasn't about one killer. It was about complicity. About a web spun over years, each man shielding the other until the silence became its own language. That night, rain rolled across the Texas plains, washing dust off the old roads. Morales drove to the Ray farmhouse one last time. She parked near the fence, headlights slicing through fog. The house stood empty, but in the beam of her flashlight she noticed something behind the shed. A wooden cross, barely visible, initials carved into it. WDP, Walter Dean Price. Fresh soil beneath it. She knelt, brushed away the dirt, heart pounding. Someone had been here recently, someone who wanted to bury more than bones. As thunder rumbled across the horizon, she realized the real story wasn't about who killed Amanda Ray. It was about how many people helped hide it. And somewhere in that dark expanse of Texas, the last man who knew the truth was still watching, waiting for the world to stop digging. Morning came slow over the plains, gray clouds hanging low, pressing down like an omen. Detective Jenna Morales barely slept. Her mind ran circles around the motel note, the cross, the names Walter Dean Price, Roy Tanner, Calvin Briggs. It wasn't just a cold case anymore. It was a decades-old conspiracy, a tangle of secrets so tightly wound that each thread she pulled risked unraveling the entire town. She drove back to Levelland, past dusty fields and silent barns, past the old farmhouse where Amanda's memory still lingered in the peeling paint and the wind-blown wheat. The town seemed smaller now, tighter, as if it had been holding its breath all these years, waiting for someone to uncover the truth. At the sheriff's office, Morales convened the task force. Young detectives, bright-eyed and anxious, clustered around her. "We need to trace Price's last known movements," she said, pointing to a map covered in pins. 1994 to 1998. Every job, every property, every interaction he had with Tanner or Briggs. He's the missing link. The team nodded. Hours turned into days as phone calls, databases, and interviews ran in loops. Every lead circled back to old barns, abandoned motels, repair shops, and the county offices themselves. Price had been everywhere, doing work no one remembered clearly, leaving traces only someone trained to see could follow. Morales focused on Briggs. While he sat in the cell, silent and pale, she brought in a digital copy of the motel photograph. "Do you recognize this girl?" she asked. Briggs stared. Nothing. A flicker of a smirk, then blankness. "I've never seen her," he said, but DNA said otherwise. The cigarette, the truck, the remains. She left him there. His silence, his calm, became almost threatening in its simplicity. Outside, the town began to stir. News crews hovered near the courthouse, helicopters circling over Levelland like vultures. Rumors spread faster than the authorities could contain them. Deputy involved? Another girl missing? Was Amanda's disappearance only the start? The locals whispered, fear threading through their conversations. Some refused to leave their homes. Others stared out their windows, scanning fields that had once seemed so familiar. One afternoon, Morales and her team traveled to a farmhouse east of town. The property had belonged to Walter Dean Price in 1995, a low wooden structure surrounded by scrub. An elderly neighbor remembered seeing a truck there late at night, a light moving inside, shadows crossing windows. Inside the house, the air smelled of decay, dust thick as fog. Morales found remnants, old wood shavings, a corner covered in faint bloodstains, a broken chair leg. Something had been dragged here. Something, or someone, had been hidden. Back at the evidence lab, the DNA from the remnants matched the profile on Amanda's ring. Not Briggs, not Tanner, Price. Morales leaned back, heart pounding. 30 years of silence, and now a name. But Price was long gone. Attempts to locate him led nowhere. Friends, relatives, ex-employers all claimed ignorance. He had vanished without a trace in 1998. The trail ran cold. Then came the anonymous call. A voice, distorted but unmistakably human, whispered, "Check the silo outside town. You'll find what you need." Morales' pulse raced. She gathered a team and drove to the old grain silo along County Road 12, rusted, tilting, forgotten. Inside, dust motes swirled in beams of light cutting through holes in the metal. They found an old barrel, sealed with tar, half buried under debris. Inside, plastic bags containing personal items. Jewelry, a diary, photographs, Amanda's handwriting on the diary, entries detailing fear, a man following her, threats. Mentions of Briggs, Tanner, Price, interwoven, confusing, but consistent. Someone had been orchestrating control, manipulating her movements, watching, waiting. Morales read aloud a passage. "He says I should trust no one, that the law will not help me. Every time I think I am safe, he is there in shadow, in the fields, in the truck. I must disappear before they find me." The diary ended abruptly, June 16, 1994, the night before Amanda vanished. Forensic analysis confirmed fingerprints on the barrel, Price's, Tanner's, and an unknown third. Briggs' prints were absent, yet his DNA lingered on items Amanda had touched. Her hairbrush, a napkin, a bottle. The pattern suggested collaboration. Someone had orchestrated the abduction. Someone else had covered it up. The next step was Tanner. Morales' team traced him to a storage unit outside San Antonio, empty. But among the contents, a set of files, newspaper clippings about Amanda's disappearance, old payroll logs, and photographs of Amanda in fields, at fairs, standing next to men whose faces were obscured. One photo showed Tanner with his arm around a shadowed figure, blurred, who resembled Price. The realization hit Morales. This was a partnership, long-term. Briggs had been a pawn. Meanwhile, Briggs's demeanor shifted. Once defiant, he now asked for counsel, curious, almost eager for details about what had been uncovered. "I didn't do it," he said quietly. "But I knew. They told me to stay quiet. They said it would blow over. I thought Amanda would come back." That evening, Morales returned to Levelland. The streets were empty, the sun set a harsh red. She passed the Ray farmhouse. Lorraine Ray stood on the porch, looking out across fields she had watched for 30 years. Morales stopped her. "We're closer," she said gently. "But there are still people involved. People who've been hiding for decades." Lorraine nodded, hands gripping the railing. "Just tell me. Tell me she's not forgotten." The diary, the barrel, the photographs, they were pieces, not the whole. Morales knew there were more silos, more hiding places, more layers of complicity. Amanda had been watched, followed, manipulated by a network that had kept her story locked away, and now it was unraveling. Back at the lab, analysts discovered something chilling. Hair samples in the barrel did not match Amanda alone. There were traces of another teenager, unidentified, with DNA markers inconsistent with anyone in the system, a possible second victim. Could Amanda have survived alongside someone else, or was there another abduction concealed within the same web? The thought tightened Morales' chest. The press had a field day. "New twist in 1994, cold case," headlines screamed. But Morales ignored the cameras, the questions, the whispers. Her mind was occupied with strategy, tracing Price's last known contacts, analyzing every transaction, every property he had touched. Someone had to know his whereabouts, someone alive, someone willing to talk. Days later, a retired sheriff's deputy came forward. A man named Paul Redding, formerly employed by Tanner and Price as a part-time maintenance worker. He had been dismissed quietly in 1996. Nervous, fidgety, he recounted a story that made Morales shiver. In 1994, he had been asked to drive a vehicle, transport items for Price, and witness Amanda's last known movements. He had complied out of fear. "I didn't know it was murder," he said, voice quivering. "I thought she'd be hidden, scared, but safe. I swear I didn't know." Morales listened carefully. Every detail corroborated the pattern she was beginning to see. Multiple adults in positions of authority or trust had collaborated to conceal Amanda's abduction. Briggs, Tanner, Price, they were all players in a scheme that spanned years. The extent of the deception was staggering. That night, Morales sat alone in the evidence room, files scattered, photos pinned, diagrams of routes drawn in red ink across maps. The name Amanda Ray glared at her from every corner. She realized the case was no longer just about solving a murder. It was about exposing decades of hidden corruption, of networks built on fear and loyalty twisted into silence. Outside, Levelland slept. Wheatfields whispered with the wind. Somewhere, Tanner, Price, or whoever remained at large, was watching, listening, waiting. And Morales knew the true danger wasn't in what she could see. It was in what she couldn't. The investigation accelerated. Detective Morales realized the deeper she dug, the more dangerous it became. Every lead she followed, every question asked, seemed to ripple through decades of silence. She assembled a smaller, trusted team and returned to Levelland, retracing the paths Amanda had been forced to take. The old fields, dusty roads, abandoned barns, they were more than locations. They were pieces of a puzzle still alive with memory. Briggs remained in custody, his attitude oscillating between confusion and sudden lucidity. One night, Morales confronted him with the diary entries recovered from the silo. "Do you recognize these?" she asked, placing the pages before him. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "I saw her write that," he admitted softly. "I told them not to hurt her. I thought I could control it, but they were always one step ahead." He wouldn't elaborate further. Every word was calculated, measured, as if revealing too much could undo him, or worse, implicate someone else. The focus shifted to Tanner. The task force traced his movements through decades of cell phone records, GPS data, and old utility bills. Though he had retired, he had maintained ties to the community, attending town events, volunteering quietly. In small towns, such invisibility was an art. He blended in perfectly, leaving only whispers and shadows behind. Morales began assembling a warrant to search his property again, this time with the full scope of what they now knew about Price and Briggs. At Tanner's house, they discovered a hidden basement, walled off behind old shelving units. Dust and cobwebs filled the space, and inside were crates, meticulously organized. In one, they found newspaper clippings, some yellowed, some recent, detailing the original disappearance of Amanda Ray and other missing teens in surrounding counties. In another, dozens of photographs. Amanda alone, Amanda with friends, Amanda with men who were either Tanner, Price, or unknown figures obscured in shadow. The photos spanned years, as if Tanner had been observing her before and after the night she vanished. The team found journals, carefully cataloged observations of Amanda's routines, notes on neighbors' habits, and even sketches of her home. Morales felt a chill. This wasn't mere surveillance. This was obsession. Tanner had kept track of every step, every interaction, every moment Amanda had been vulnerable. The level of premeditation, the depth of control was staggering. Meanwhile, forensic teams analyzed the hair and skin samples from the silo. Aside from Amanda and the unidentified teenager, there was a partial DNA profile of a third adult, male, unknown. The profile didn't match Briggs, Tanner, or Price. This suggested a fourth party involved, someone who had left traces intentionally minimal, calculated. Morales began to suspect there were more layers to the conspiracy than even Briggs had admitted. They turned to financial records next. Briggs, as it turned out, had sporadically received wire transfers from an anonymous source in the mid-1990s. Small sums, enough to sustain travel, lodging, and supplies. Who was sending the money? Tanner's account records revealed large withdrawals, often rounded, from an unknown collaborator. Every trail suggested a network, a ring that had quietly orchestrated Amanda's disappearance and protected its own members. In Levelland, whispers grew louder. People remembered fleeting encounters, a dark truck at night, a man wandering fields, a figure watching from behind trees. Some old neighbors were willing to talk now, shaken by the renewed media attention. One woman, who had been a teenager herself in 1994, recounted seeing a man with a denim jacket standing near Amanda's usual path to her friend's house. The figure had a crooked gait, an oddly familiar posture, and eyes that never seemed to blink. Morales filed the statement, knowing every eyewitness account, even decades old, could provide the breakthrough they needed. At the sheriff's office, Morales reviewed decades-old radio logs. One transmission stood out, June 17, 1994, 9:03 p.m. "All units, please be advised. Suspicious vehicle near County Road 14. Occupants unknown. Maintain position until backup arrives." No follow-up had ever been recorded. It was as if the alert had been deliberately erased from official records. Someone within the department had manipulated the response, ensuring no one intercepted the events unfolding that night. The task force expanded their search. Old barns, sheds, silos, even culverts along the highways were inspected for signs of disturbance. They unearthed additional personal effects: a necklace, a pair of worn sneakers, a small diary belonging to the unidentified teenager. Entries detailed a presence in the area in 1994, sightings of Amanda, and fear of a man in uniform. The language mirrored Amanda's diary, the same careful notation of times, locations, and behaviors. Morales recognized a pattern. 2 teenagers had been trapped under the watch of adults who held authority in the community. Adults who manipulated and monitored without detection. With evidence mounting, the DA considered charging Tanner alongside Briggs, but the unknown fourth party posed a challenge. Without identifying him, they risked leaving the network partially intact. Morales turned to federal databases, seeking any record of similar disappearances in the Southwest during the early to mid-1990s. Patterns emerged. Missing teens with connections to minor law enforcement, contractors, or local officials. A chilling network that spanned counties, decades, and victims. Late one evening, Morales returned to the farmhouse where Amanda had grown up. The fields stretched, wind whispering over the dry soil. She imagined Amanda running, hiding, the fear in her young eyes. Somewhere, someone had orchestrated that terror, ensuring silence through threats and intimidation. Morales walked to the old porch, running her fingers over peeling paint. 30 years of waiting, hoping, wondering. Finally, some threads were unraveling, but the magnitude of the deception was overwhelming. Meanwhile, Briggs remained in custody, more cooperative than before. He confessed small details: the truck, the initial transport, his minor role in moving items for Price. He repeatedly insisted he had never physically harmed Amanda, though his knowledge of locations and movements implied complicity. Morales noted the psychological impact. The years of silence had eroded his confidence, leaving him trapped in a web he once thought controlled. As Part 4 drew to a close, the task force prepared a new strategy. Tanner's disappearance, Price's unknown location, the unknown fourth collaborator, all pointed to one conclusion: the resolution of Amanda Ray's case was not a single arrest or confession. It was a slow peeling back of layers, a decades-long labyrinth of manipulation, surveillance, and intimidation. Morales understood that each discovery brought them closer not only to truth but to danger. Someone had wanted Amanda's story hidden, and that someone or some group could still be active. The night sky stretched dark and endless above Levelland. Field crickets sang, wind rustled through abandoned barns, and in the distance the silhouette of a figure paused, watching. Somewhere out there, the final piece waited, hidden in shadow, observing as the hunt resumed. The following days were a blur of interviews, surveillance, and data analysis. Detective Morales pored over decades-old phone records, utility bills, and property transfers, connecting dots no one had considered before. Each lead hinted at an invisible network, an unspoken pact of silence that had kept Amanda Ray's fate concealed for 30 years. She traced the paths of Briggs, Tanner, and Price, overlaying maps from 1994 with modern satellite imagery, searching for patterns, hidden locations, forgotten roads. Fields once empty now held secrets under layers of dust and weeds, every fence line and barn a potential clue. Briggs remained in custody, his calm exterior cracking in subtle ways. "I did what they told me," he whispered one evening. "I moved things, I hid things, but I didn't hurt her. I thought it was temporary, that she'd be returned." Morales watched him carefully. The confession was partial, cautious, but it confirmed what the evidence suggested. He was a participant, but not the orchestrator. Someone else had planned it, someone with authority, knowledge, and access. The investigation turned back to Tanner. Surveillance reports indicated he had been in hiding intermittently since 1994, moving between small towns across West Texas, never staying long, always just outside the line of observation. Morales realized he had been preparing, always aware that someone might come looking. The deeper she delved, the more she understood the depth of his foresight, the calculated nature of his concealment. He had lived decades in plain sight, invisible to a town that trusted him implicitly. Meanwhile, forensic analysis yielded more revelations. Soil samples from Tanner's former properties matched trace residues found on items in the silo. Small, almost imperceptible particles, dust, fragments of fertilizer, paint chips, linked him directly to the concealment of personal effects, to sites where Amanda's belongings had been stored or moved. These microscopic traces were the fingerprints of history, evidence of a deliberate, methodical effort to erase a life from memory. At the same time, Price's trail grew cold. Federal databases turned up nothing. Every known address had been abandoned, accounts closed, and associates either deceased or unwilling to speak. Morales suspected that Price, like Tanner, had anticipated scrutiny, leaving only partial traces, red herrings, and controlled exposures to mislead investigators. Briggs had been manipulated, kept loyal through fear and obligation, unaware of the full extent of the network. Amid the investigation, Morales received an unexpected tip. A local woman, previously silent, recalled seeing a dark sedan parked near the Ray farmhouse on multiple occasions in the months before Amanda's disappearance. The license plate had been noted by a neighbor, but never reported. The vehicle belonged to a local contractor, a man named Leonard Bishop. Records showed he had worked with Tanner and Price, often providing transportation and labor. Bishop had disappeared from public records in the late 1990s, moving across counties under assumed names. The pattern was clear. A network of individuals had colluded, each playing a role, each maintaining silence through fear or loyalty. Briggs, confronted with Bishop's name, stiffened. He was the one directing things, Briggs admitted quietly. "I was told to follow orders. I never questioned him. He controlled the movement." Morales noted the trembling in his hands. Decades of secrecy weighed heavily on him, the truth breaking through layers of denial and fear. The task force focused on locating Bishop. Financial records suggested he had transferred assets and maintained accounts under various aliases, effectively erasing his identity. Morales coordinated with state and federal agencies to track digital footprints, cross-referencing travel records, utility accounts, and public documents. It was meticulous work, each data point a potential breakthrough. Meanwhile, the community reacted. Levelland's residents, once silent, began coming forward with memories long suppressed. Stories emerged of unexplained nights, strange vehicles, unfamiliar men loitering near the Ray property. One elderly couple recalled hearing voices from a distant barn in the early hours, laughter, whispers, and the faint sound of a girl crying. Each account, once dismissed as imagination or rumor, now carried weight. Together they formed a mosaic of Amanda's final days, a patchwork of fear, observation, and manipulation. Morales returned to the farmhouse, walking among the wheat fields. She traced Amanda's likely paths, imagining her movements, the fear she must have felt. The heat of the day pressed down, unforgiving, as she stood in the shadow of the farmhouse. Somewhere in the distance, an old barn creaked, the wind carrying whispers that were no longer just memories. They were warnings. That night, the task force received an anonymous message, a tip leading to a small abandoned shed near the edge of town. Inside, more items connected to Amanda were found. A bracelet, a set of school notebooks, and a folded letter, partially charred. The writing was frantic, a mixture of Amanda's voice and urgency, references to a man in the uniform, instructions to trust no one, and the repeated plea, if something happens to me, it wasn't him. Morales read the letter aloud to her team, the weight of decades pressing into the small room. The words confirmed what they suspected. Multiple parties had been involved, each complicit in a plan that had stretched across years and counties. Analysis of the charred letter revealed DNA traces. Briggs was present, unsurprisingly, along with unknown male DNA, not matching Tanner or Price. The possibility of additional participants widened the scope of the investigation. Morales realized that the narrative of Amanda's disappearance was not linear. It was a web, a network of complicity, manipulation, and fear. Each revelation brought them closer to the truth, but also deeper into the shadows of human deception. Briggs, now fully cooperating, provided a timeline of events. Movement of items, locations of concealment, and interactions with Tanner and Price. His memory, sharpened by years of avoidance, offered insights into the coordination and meticulous planning involved. He described late-night meetings, instructions to monitor Amanda's routines, and warnings to avoid exposure. Each detail added texture, depth, and horror to the picture of what had occurred in 1994. Morales compiled the data, mapping routes, locations, and timelines. She could visualize the choreography. Briggs moving items, Tanner observing, Price directing logistics, Bishop facilitating transport. Amanda's movements had been restricted, controlled, monitored. Every escape route she might have taken had been anticipated, every cry for help potentially silenced before it could reach another human being. As Part 5 drew to a close, Morales understood the magnitude of what they were facing. Solving Amanda Ray's cold case was not a single act, but a prolonged unveiling of a decades-long operation. The network of collusion, fear, and secrecy had been meticulously maintained, leaving a trail that spanned counties and years. Each step they uncovered brought them closer to the full truth, but also highlighted the depth of human cunning, the lengths to which people would go to hide a crime, and the chilling endurance of silence. The night settled over Levelland, dark and oppressive. Wheatfield's whispered secrets carried for 30 years. Somewhere, one of the men who orchestrated this long, hidden nightmare still watched, waited, aware that the walls of secrecy were beginning to crumble. The following morning, Detective Morales returned to the task force office with a renewed sense of urgency. They had mapped connections, gathered evidence, and interviewed witnesses, yet the unknown variables loomed like shadows. Walter Dean Price remained at large, Bishop's current location unknown, Tanner still missing. The puzzle was growing more complex, each piece revealing more threads than the team could immediately follow. Morales felt the weight of responsibility, knowing that one wrong move could allow the final orchestrators to vanish again. She convened her team. "We need to think in layers," Morales said, pointing at the board cluttered with photographs, timelines, and maps. Amanda's disappearance isn't the only event. There's a pattern. 3 decades of oversight, manipulation, and silence. We're not just solving a murder. We're unraveling a network. Every action must be precise. She outlined the plan. Track financial activity, examine property records, cross-reference vehicle registrations, and continue witness interviews. Each step was meticulous, exhausting, and mentally draining. Briggs, now cooperative, provided critical details. He recalled meetings with Price and Tanner in 1994, discussions about transportation routes, hiding places, and contingency plans. He described a hierarchy. Price as coordinator, Tanner as observer and enforcer, Briggs as executor of minor tasks. Bishop, the mysterious fourth party, facilitated logistics, vehicles, supplies, and communication between the operatives. The structure was chilling in its precision. a small-town criminal network orchestrating disappearances under the guise of ordinary life. The task force reviewed old flight logs and bus records. A series of movements in 1994 suggested Amanda's presence may have been transported outside county lines, possibly even across state borders temporarily. Witnesses recalled a dark sedan with distinctive license plates. The vehicle's trail led them to a rural property outside New Mexico, where an abandoned cabin was discovered. Inside were remnants of storage, personal items, diaries, photographs, some belonging to Amanda, others unidentifiable. Morales carefully documented each discovery, knowing that the smallest detail could break open the case. DNA analysis of the unidentifiable items revealed traces of another minor, potentially a second victim, whose disappearance had not been reported at the time. This revelation widened the investigation dramatically. Morales realized the network had likely been active before Amanda's abduction and possibly after. The implications were staggering. Decades of crimes potentially obscured under the radar of law enforcement, multiple victims whose stories were buried, some perhaps still living with trauma, others lost entirely. Meanwhile, Tanner's trail grew increasingly urgent. Surveillance footage from local businesses, combined with sightings reported by citizens, indicated that he was moving across the state, carefully avoiding contact with authorities. Every time a location was checked, it was empty. Morales recognized a man who had mastered invisibility, someone who understood the limitations of law enforcement and the community's assumptions. Each disappearance, each transfer of items had been calculated to avoid detection. The DA's office debated how to proceed. Briggs's testimony was critical, but with Tanner and Price unaccounted for, prosecution was incomplete. Morales suggested a psychological profile of the missing men. Price, methodical, meticulous, experienced in manipulation. Tanner, observant, patient, controlled. Bishop, opportunistic, skilled in logistics, willing to disappear. Understanding the player's psychology became as vital as physical evidence. It would guide investigators to predict behavior and locate hiding places. Witness interviews expanded. Residents recounted long-forgotten details, unusual trips, unexplained absences, a man loitering near the school, a vehicle parked for hours with its engine off. Each account added dimension to the narrative of Amanda's final days. The community's memories, once dismissed, now formed a network of testimonies, reinforcing the pattern of surveillance and control. Morales realized that Amanda's fear had been omnipresent, her movements dictated not by chance, but by deliberate observation and manipulation. The task force also examined Briggs's financial transactions from 1994 to 1996. Sparse, irregular transfers suggested controlled allowances, payments made to ensure compliance and silence. This pattern of monetary control reinforced the theory of a coordinated network using leverage to maintain secrecy. Small amounts, consistent in timing, ensured cooperation without drawing attention. Every record, every deposit, was a piece of evidence of complicity, demonstrating the lengths to which the orchestrators had gone to maintain control. At night, Morales returned to Amanda's farmhouse. The wheat fields stretched endlessly under a heavy moon, shadows twisting like fingers. She imagined Amanda running, hiding, struggling against a reality orchestrated by adults she should have trusted. The farmhouse stood as a monument to memory and fear. Morales traced the lines of the windows, doors, the areas where Amanda had likely moved, her mind filling in the terrifying gaps. She felt a connection to the girl, the urgency to uncover truth, and a chilling awareness of the unseen presence that had watched for decades. Briggs provided further insight. He described the logistics of hiding Amanda. Scheduled routines, controlled movements, threats that enforced compliance. She knew, he whispered one night. She always knew someone was there. She was clever, smart, but she was alone. We kept her alone. The confession, partial as it was, reinforced the calculated cruelty of the operation. Amanda's disappearance had not been a spontaneous act. It had been orchestrated with precision, with multiple adults involved, each complicit in sustaining fear and secrecy. Forensic teams analyzed traces from all known locations: barn floors, vehicle interiors, storage units, abandoned cabins. Each sample confirmed the movement patterns described by Briggs, Tanner, and Price. Soil residues, hair, and microscopic fibers corroborated the narrative, providing a map of her forced movements. The physical evidence reinforced witness testimony, financial records, and confessions, creating a multidimensional picture of a calculated abduction and concealment operation. By the end of Part 6, Morales understood the stakes. The case was no longer simply about Briggs's arrest. It was about exposing a decades-long system of coercion, concealment, and complicity. Every step brought them closer to unveiling the truth, but also deeper into the network's shadows. The men involved had prepared, anticipating discovery. The challenge was not just finding them, but understanding the full breadth of the conspiracy, identifying every participant, and revealing the hidden truths long buried under silence and fear. Night fell over level land. The wind swept across wheat fields, rustling through forgotten barns. Somewhere, Tanner, Price, or Bishop remained at large, observing, waiting. The shadow of 1994 lingered, a dark presence that had outlasted decades. Morales knew that solving the case meant confronting not only the past, but the enduring hidden structures that had allowed the crime to persist undetected for so long. The investigation had become a relentless pursuit through decades of secrets, and Detective Morales felt the pressure mounting. Every lead led to another maze of questions, every answer exposed more uncertainty. Yet, with Briggs cooperating, the task force began piecing together a clearer picture of the night Amanda vanished. He described moving her belongings, following instructions from Price and Tanner, and observing the meticulous planning that had kept Amanda confined, monitored, and controlled. His words were chilling, laced with guilt and fear, painting a vivid image of a network that had operated silently for decades. Morales and her team revisited the original crime scene, walking the wheat fields where Amanda had once walked, tracing her steps, imagining her fear. The farmhouse, long abandoned, creaked under the wind, the peeling paint whispering memories of a summer night that had shattered a family and an entire community. Morales could feel the presence of history pressing in, the invisible surveillance, the strategic concealment, the careful orchestration of a young life stolen. She noted subtle traces, footprints long faded, a broken window latch, disturbed soil near the edge of the barn. Each detail, previously overlooked, now held significance. The team expanded interviews to neighbors, relatives, and anyone who had been in contact with Tanner, Price, or Bishop in the 1990s. Patterns emerged: unusual trips, unscheduled absences, unexplained deliveries, conversations that hinted at secrets not meant to be shared. Each testimony, cross-referenced with old reports and modern technology, created a network map of connections and movements. Morales realized that the abduction had been orchestrated with military-like precision, executed by men who had exploited trust, authority, and fear. Briggs provided further insight into the roles each man had played. Price had been the planner, calculating routes, anticipating obstacles, and maintaining control over the group. Tanner had been the observer and enforcer, ensuring Amanda remained in line and that Briggs complied. Bishop had facilitated logistics, transporting items, securing locations, and creating the appearance of normalcy. Each had played a role, each dependent on the others, creating a system of control that insulated them from discovery. As the investigation deepened, forensic analysis revealed more unsettling details. Soil samples, hair, and fibers from multiple locations confirmed the presence of multiple individuals. DNA traces from the silo, the farmhouse, and the abandoned cabins indicated Amanda had been moved several times, her confinement carefully managed to prevent escape or discovery. A previously unidentified male profile appeared on several samples, suggesting the involvement of a fourth party whose identity remained unknown. Morales recognized the complexity. The abduction was not the work of a single perpetrator, but a coordinated operation, sustained and hidden for decades. Community engagement became critical. Morales reached out to former schoolmates, friends, and local residents who had been teenagers in 1994. Many were initially hesitant to speak, memories buried under years of silence, fear, or forgetfulness. Slowly, fragments emerged, glimpses of a dark sedan parked near the Ray property, a figure watching from the edge of the fields, a shadowed man loitering near barns. These recollections, though inconsistent, collectively reinforced the narrative of surveillance, control, and meticulous concealment. Meanwhile, the task force traced Tanner's movements over the years. Surveillance footage, public records, and witness accounts indicated he had remained in Texas, moving between small towns, maintaining an appearance of ordinary life. He had skillfully avoided detection, understanding both the limitations and assumptions of law enforcement and the trust of the community. His disappearance was strategic, a deliberate effort to evade accountability while maintaining a presence that allowed for manipulation and monitoring. Briggs' cooperation revealed further psychological details about the network. He described how fear was leveraged to enforce compliance both for himself and for Amanda. Threats were subtle, implied, and reinforced by authority figures within the group. Amanda had been acutely aware of surveillance, her movements constrained, her interactions calculated. The psychological trauma, sustained over weeks and months, had been as significant as any physical restraint, creating an environment in which silence was enforced without overt violence. The discovery of additional personal effects, including diaries, photographs, and small personal items, provided further insight into Amanda's experience. One diary detailed her observations of the men's behaviors, noting inconsistencies, threats, and subtle manipulations. She had documented patterns, anticipating their moves, seeking moments of opportunity to escape. yet constrained by fear and isolation. These artifacts offered a rare glimpse into her resilience and awareness, countering the narrative of helplessness with evidence of her intelligence and perception. Financial records reinforced the narrative of control. Briggs and Tanner had been compensated for their roles, payments structured to maintain compliance and discourage disclosure. Small sums, consistent and traceable, ensured loyalty and minimized suspicion. The structure of the network extended beyond direct control of Amanda. It included financial incentives, strategic planning, and contingency measures designed to protect the operatives and maintain secrecy. By the end of Part 7, Morales had constructed a working model of the network. Price as planner, Tanner as enforcer, Bishop as logistician, Briggs as executor of minor tasks, with potential additional collaborators identified through DNA and witness accounts. Each piece, while incomplete, revealed the sophistication of the operation and the endurance of secrecy over decades. Morales recognized that uncovering the truth required patience, precision, and an understanding that the case extended beyond a single abduction. It was the dismantling of a hidden system that had operated with impunity for 30 years. Night fell over Levelland. The wheat fields whispered under the moonlight, shadows stretching long and ominous. Somewhere, hidden from view, the remaining orchestrators observed, waiting, anticipating the actions of those who had finally begun to unravel their carefully constructed world. Morales knew the danger remained. Solving the case was no longer just about justice for Amanda. It was about confronting the lingering presence of decades of deception, manipulation, and control, and ensuring that no other victim would be trapped in silence. Detective Morales woke before dawn, the first light spilling weak and gray across the plains. Sleep had become a distant memory. Every night the case haunted her, whispers of the past threading through her thoughts. She reviewed the task force's findings, connecting maps, timelines, and witness statements. The emerging pattern was undeniable. Amanda Ray's disappearance had been orchestrated by a network, each member complicit, each step calculated. But the final pieces remained elusive: Tanner, Price, Bishop, and the unidentified fourth party. Whoever they were, they had anticipated discovery, leaving only fragments for investigators to follow decades later. Briggs, confined in a cell that had become part confessional, part prison, described the control mechanisms in painstaking detail. Every step was monitored, he said, voice low, almost fearful. Routes were planned. Timing was precise. If Amanda strayed, we were there to correct it. Morales listened intently. The level of coordination was staggering, but his admissions provided clarity. Briggs had executed tasks under duress, but he revealed the infrastructure: communications, surveillance, coordination between multiple locations, and psychological control over Amanda. It was a criminal network that had operated with terrifying efficiency. The task force expanded its focus to Price and Bishop. Financial audits revealed sporadic but consistent wire transfers from the mid-1990s, funds channeled to maintain operations, pay accomplices, and cover expenses. Locations tied to these transfers were mapped: abandoned barns, rental properties, remote roads. Each link reinforced the emerging picture of a network with foresight, resources, and a capacity to disappear when necessary. Morales coordinated with federal agencies to track Price. Investigators dug through vehicle registrations, public records, and past employment history. A pattern emerged. Price frequently relocated, leveraging assumed identities, moving materials, and maintaining connections with Tanner and Bishop. Briggs confirmed these interactions, his testimony revealing a network of deliberate movement designed to avoid law enforcement detection. Meanwhile, Tanner's last known location drew attention. Reports placed him in remote areas across West Texas, often at the edge of visibility, never interacting directly with the public. Surveillance footage, corroborated by witness accounts, suggested a man who understood law enforcement limitations, the expectations of the community, and the assumption that a retired deputy would not be considered a suspect. Tanner had mastered invisibility, blending into routine while maintaining operational oversight. Forensic analysis of personal effects recovered from various locations revealed more unsettling details. Hair samples, fibers, and soil traces confirmed Amanda had been moved multiple times, her confinement carefully controlled. DNA traces from unidentified adults surfaced, linking previously unconnected locations and suggesting the involvement of a fourth party. Morales understood that the abduction had been orchestrated by at least 4 individuals, possibly more, each with distinct responsibilities and mutual knowledge. Community members, initially hesitant, began providing new testimonies. Recollections of unusual vehicles, shadowed figures, and unexplained activities near the Ray farmhouse in 1994 were cross-referenced with existing evidence. The patterns reinforced the narrative of surveillance and control. One witness recalled a man in uniform, distinctive in appearance, near the fields where Amanda had been observed walking with friends. Another described a vehicle parked for hours along a remote road, engine off, windows tinted, observing movements. Each testimony added depth, corroborating the multi-layered nature of the abduction. Briggs, under questioning, elaborated on the psychological tactics employed. She knew someone was watching, he said, but she didn't know who. Fear was constant, in the air, in the fields, in the trucks. We ensured she felt isolated. That kept her compliant. His confessions revealed a methodical approach to psychological control, confirming the diary entries found in the silo. Amanda's writings had chronicled these subtle threats, noting routines, observations, and manipulations imposed by multiple adults. The task force also examined the logistics of the operation, routes taken to transport Amanda, storage locations for her belongings, and surveillance patterns indicated planning, coordination, and anticipation of variables. Every potential escape route had been considered, every chance of intervention minimized. It was criminal planning at an almost industrial scale, executed in secrecy for decades, leveraging trust, authority, and fear to maintain control. Financial analysis revealed an additional layer. Transactions tied to Tanner and Price indicated strategic compensation to individuals like Briggs, maintaining loyalty and ensuring compliance. Payments were structured to avoid attention, small enough to remain unnoticed, sufficient to enforce allegiance. The network had operated as a closed system, relying on fear, manipulation, and subtle incentives to maintain secrecy and operational continuity. By the end of Part 8, Morales had constructed a comprehensive model of the network. Price as planner, Tanner as enforcer and observer, Bishop as facilitator and logistician, Briggs as subordinate executor, with potential additional collaborators suggested by DNA evidence and witness reports. The sophistication of the operation was clear, revealing a chilling level of premeditation and control. Night fell over Leveland. Wheat fields swayed under the wind, shadows stretching across the landscape. Somewhere, one or more of the orchestrators remained at large, aware of the investigation, observing, waiting. Morales understood that the pursuit of truth required patience, persistence, and careful planning. The shadow of 1994 lingered, a presence that had endured decades, now facing exposure as the layers of deception were methodically dismantled. The storm rolled in from the caprock like a warning, a low rumble crawling across the plains until it pressed its hand over Leveland and dimmed the sun. Detective Jenna Morales stood in the doorway of the task force room, coffee gone cold in her grip, when the lab called with the sentence she'd been waiting to hear. The unknown male DNA, the one that kept surfacing on Amanda's things in the silo dust, on tape edges and the lip of a jar, had a genealogical hit. Not a direct match, a family. A branch on a tree nobody wanted to admit they were part of. Second cousins in New Mexico, a great aunt who left panhandle wheat for desert scrub, a surname that had been sanded down by time and aliases until it gleamed with nothing. But underneath the polish, the name held, Bishop. They worked the hit from both ends. Public records, property tax rolls, a trail of abandoned P.O. boxes like breadcrumbs in the wind. Leonard Eli Bishop, Morales said to the room, the words too calm for the current that ripped through her chest. Contractor, driver, paid in cash, disappears in '99, reappears in 2004 as Leland Burke with a different birthday and the same crooked signature, Midland. An HVAC outfit that changed names every spring. A rental house on the edge of the caliche where the streetlights gave up after dusk. They didn't kick the door. They didn't announce. They watched. A trash pull, patient and ugly, a paper coffee cup collapsed into itself like a small, tired animal. The lab took it, spun it, scraped it, and the profile bloomed under fluorescence like a ghost stepping into a doorway. Matched to the unknown male, matched to the barrel, matched to the pages where Amanda's handwriting stuttered and ended. Bishop was the fourth man. They rolled at dawn, 2 cars, no siren. Bishop stepped out with keys hooked on a finger, squinting at the light like it had done him wrong. He caught the reflection of badges in a side mirror and ran. Not far, a sprint that broke on the edge of a service road. He dropped to his knees in the dust as if he'd meant to kneel there all along, hands out, fingers spread, eyes doing the math of options and arriving at 0. He didn't ask what this was about, he already knew. At the station, the voice he gave them was breathy, eager to be liked. "I drove," he said, palms up, confessing to the small sins and kicking the big ones down the road. "I didn't touch nobody. I moved boxes. I kept engines running. I didn't plan." He tried on innocence like a jacket a size too small. He shed Price from his tongue, shrugged Tanner into the center of the room with a chin tilt and a practiced sigh. "Price ran the rooms," he said. "Tanner cleaned up. I just drove." He wanted a bargain. He wanted a timeline built of softer words. Morales didn't blink. She slid a blank pad across the table and waited. Hours later, he drew a map. Not a map you'd frame, a map you'd burn when the wind turned. Lines like veins, X's like old wounds. A locker near the county line, mile marker 41. Drainage culvert with a lip of bent rebar like a broken tooth. Dead drops, he whispered, pride and shame braided together, in case we had to run. They opened the locker with a wrench where a key should have been. Inside, a ledger wrapped in oilcloth, Polaroids sealed in brittle plastic, a microcassette with 617 word backup written in a hand that tried to be steady. The ledger carried numbers like prayers, all columns and cold arithmetic. 200 here for gas, 40 for food, 500 for repair. Next to some entries, initials laid quiet and damning. CB for Briggs, RT for Tanner, WP for Price, LB for the man with his wrists cuffed to a table down the hall, and, flaring through the fog of letters like a flare in a night field, 2 marks they hadn't seen before, HK and an old-style S that looked like a ribbon pulled tight. In the lab's small listening room, they pressed the microcassette into a deck that still remembered how to sing 1994. The tape fought them, then obliged. Static, footfalls, a door, voices, a girl's breath like a moth beating itself against glass, a man saying, "Clock's dead, it's 9:14 anyway," and another answering, that's not, she needs air. Price and Tanner, stripped of swagger by proximity to consequence. Then a third voice, lower, careful, the kind that never learned to shout because it never had to, the kind that could end a room by clearing its throat. "Enough," it said. "Move." The cassette hiccuped, scraped, and rolled on to a sound that could have been a chair leg or a knuckle or a life-changing direction. Morales felt the hair lift along her forearms, not just because she'd confirmed what the files suggested, that Amanda had been inside a room where the clock had died and men spoke like they were building a wall, but because that third voice didn't belong to Price or Tanner or Bishop. It belonged to someone who knew where the light switches were in every office in Hockley County, someone who signed paychecks and shook hands in photographs. The sheriff from 1994 smiled down at her from the wall of Tanner's house in a frame that hadn't gathered dust the way grief does. "We all keep our secrets," the back of the glossy had said. Now the secret had a timbre. They took the tape to Lorraine first, not to play it, to tell her. "We're further than we've ever been," Morales said. And it wasn't a line. It was a step taken and felt. Lorraine sat with Amanda's ring turning between her fingers like a moon, eyes fixed on a window, where rain walked down in slow, silver legs. "Do I get to know who?" she asked, without moving, without softening the iron in her voice that had kept 30 Christmas letters marching to the sheriff's box year after year. "Soon," Morales said, hating the word, loving the truth it held. "Soon." The cross behind the shed had waited long enough, WDP, carved with a pocket knife into weathered wood, fresh soil under it that had shifted since the last time Morales put her hand there. They came quiet with tarps and a tent, and the kind of patience that respects the dead. The earth gave up metal first. A button, a zipper tooth, a small oval of a St. Christopher medal blackened with time. Then bone, mail, a healed radius fracture that matched a break in Walter Dean Price's arrest photo from 1991 when he took a swing at a bouncer and lost. The skull told the rest. A .38 slug nested like a seed in the occipital bone. Service caliber. Not proof of a gun, but a shape of a life's last moment. The ME set estimated time of death somewhere in 1998, years after Amanda vanished, years before anyone knew to say his name under their breath with fear. Tanner's note from the desert motel unfurled in Morales' head like a torn flag. "I didn't kill her, I just cleaned up the mess. Cleaned up Price, cleaned up ledgers, cleaned up radio logs, cleaned up the noise that could surface if too many men kept talking." She could hear him, the tone, the competence, the neat cruelty of a man who preferred to erase rather than confess. The ex-sheriff's face kept showing up beside him like an echo that learned to step half a pace behind. Who recruited whom? Who blessed what? Who said enough? Move. Bishop was read the recovery like a bedtime story with no moral. It shook him, not enough to grow a conscience, enough to loosen a bolt that had been torqued tight for 3 decades. "He was supposed to go," Bishop said, voice fraying. "Price, he was trouble. He started talking, swinging at ghosts, thought he was owed more." He stared at the table as if the ledger could sprout teeth and take a bite. "I didn't put him in the dirt," he whispered. "But I knew the day it happened because nobody called me for a week after. That's how I know." They ran the ledger against bank camera stills and fuel receipts. A pattern rose like a watermark. Cash on Fridays, rounds on Sundays. A private cookout the same week a girl 2 counties over stopped answering to her first name. The letters HK and the ribbon S appeared beside entries that paid for uniform cleaning and paper disposal and wood. Wood for a cross. Paper for logs. uniforms that could stand in a doorway and calm a child because they smelled like safety. Morales traced the initials with a pen that didn't touch the page. H.K., the sheriff's given name had been Harold. The middle name no one used was Kent, Harold Kent. She didn't say it out loud, not yet. She carried it into the hallway and looked at the men and women who had signed on to drag 1994 into a room where the light was unforgiving. "We prepare a warrant," she said, and her voice didn't shake. "We treat this like what it is, an internal wound." One detective drew in a sharp breath. Another nodded as if a decision he'd been making privately had just been made for him. They understood. A badge doesn't keep you out of the dark. Sometimes it leads you into it. Before the ink could dry, the phone rang with a voice built from years of keeping quiet. A retired dispatcher, hands ruined by arthritis and boxes, said she had a tape, not a copy anyone knew about. An off-air recorder she kept at home because men kept leaning over her shoulder when she filed, and she learned to keep a twin of everything that felt like weight. She drove it in a shoebox with a grocery list taped to the lid and set it on Morales' desk like she was returning a borrowed casserole dish. June 17, 1994, 21:03. Suspicious vehicle near CR 14. The tapes and evidence had dropped a stitch there, a jump to the next hour like everyone took a collective nap. The home recorder kept rolling. "Hold position," the man said. "Belay, negative response, copy." A smaller voice said copy because smaller voices always do. Rain rat-tat-tatted on the precinct windows while they listened to history behave itself. In the hiss between transmissions, a rustle. Beside the dispatch desk, the off-air radio had picked up a secondary channel, the kind used when you didn't want dispatch to hear. Two men, calm. "It's done," one said. "You clean," said the other. Not names, not a confession a jury could hold in its palm, but enough for a line to grow inside Morales that would not bend, enough to connect a voice on a microcassette to a voice that could issue a belay and make patrol cars turn their wheels toward quiet. They could have moved then. They didn't. They set the trap precisely because Tanner and whatever was left of the old command structure had lived on precision. The ex-sheriff still kept an office downtown above a hardware store whose owner liked to frame fishing photos and pretend he didn't know what else men did with line and hooks. They didn't arrest him there. They watched his routines. A coffee at 6, a walk to the courthouse at 10 to visit old friends he didn't have anymore. A drive out on Thursdays to the west side where the fields hide what you want them to hide if you ask nicely. Morales went back to the Ray farmhouse with 2 uniforms she trusted and a recorder that wrote its date onto every second. She stood in the kitchen where the clock had died, and for a moment the past overlapped the present so tightly she could hear the tick that never came. On the table lay a cardboard box, no dust on the flaps, no mouse bites on the corners. Someone had brought it tonight or last night with the confidence of a man who never expected to be seen. Inside, newspaper clippings cut to remove bylines, a service patch with threads pulled, a photograph of a girl with hair braided to her waist standing by a patrol car, and a note. Different paper than Amanda's, different hand, same ritual. 3 words. Half was me. Lightning blued the window. Out past the shed, somewhere between the cross and the tree line, a truck engine turned over and then cut, like a man checking his pulse. Morales lifted her head without moving her feet. The 2 uniforms melted toward the doorways they'd planned. Her heart found a fast, even thrum and stayed there. If Tanner was here, it was because a man always returns to the room where he first learned how easy it is to make a thing stop. If the ex-sheriff was here, it was because power doesn't imagine it can be seen by anything but its own reflection. Her phone vibrated once with a text she didn't look at. In the glass of the kitchen window, a shape ghosted beside her shoulder, broad, still, a hat brim like a horizon. She didn't spin, she didn't announce. She let the silence do the introducing the way it had for 30 years. Behind her, a floorboard confessed to a wait. In her ear, the recorded mic counted seconds and branded them with date and time as if truth needed a timestamp to be real. Out in town, Lorraine Ray lit a candle and set the ring beside it and whispered her daughter's name into the place where the house kept the old air. In the evidence locker, the ledger waited to be read on a stand that used to hold church bulletins. In a cell, Briggs sat with his hands folded and remembered the sound of a chair skidding across concrete in a room where the clock didn't move. In a plastic bag in a lab, the microcassette slept like a seed with a root already probing for crack and light. The man in the hat took one step closer, and the kitchen shared the sound with the night. Another engine turned over beyond the shed and stayed alive this time, patient as a hunter that already knows where the deer bed down. Morales thought of every line on every map they'd drawn, every ex-bishop had made with shaking fingers, every note Amanda had left like a breadcrumb for a future that took too long to arrive. She thought of the 3 words in the box. Half was me. The other half stood behind her, or outside in a truck, or both halves were the same whole finally daring to be watched. Jenna, a voice said, using her name like they were old neighbors comparing rain gauges. Calm, casual, the throat clearing from the tape given flesh. Turn around slow. She didn't. Not yet. She let the house count her breaths. She felt the weight of the badge on her belt the way a diver feels air, the thing that keeps you alive and could also pull you down if you hold it wrong. She raised her eyes to the window and watched the shape behind her blur and sharpen with each pulse of lightning like a negative developing itself. Somewhere inside the silhouette, a hand moved. Somewhere outside, the second engine eased into gear. The storm shivered and the weed answered, and 30 years finally decided they were tired of waiting. The voice behind her had the weight of policy and old photographs. It didn't rise. It didn't need to. Turn around slow, he said, and the house listened with her. Detective Jenna Morales let one more breath slide through the room, then pivoted in the narrow kitchen light where the dead clock watched like a blind eye. The brim was exactly as the window had promised, the jaw set like a county line. The lapel pin, old and dulled, still shaped like a 5-point star that believed it baptized whoever wore it. Harold Kent, sheriff in 1994, retired, revered, the man in ribboned initials beside ledger entries that paid for quiet. Evening, he said, as if greeting a neighbor over a fence post. The storm pressed a palm to the windows, tested the latch. Outside, an engine idled and fell to a murmur, waiting the way a hunting dog waits, perfectly still with muscle humming. Inside, 2 uniforms she trusted breathed with the house, invisible on either flank, boots set, safeties quiet. Morales didn't reach for the badge. She didn't need to show him what he already knew. Harold, she said gently, using the name he signed when he cared who saw it. You kept a key. Her eyes flicked to the cardboard box he'd left, the note with 3 words cut like wire. Half was me. He smiled the way men smile when they are still auditioning for likable. This place has too much weather in it to be safe. I check on it sometimes. He looked past her shoulder, not at the clock, but just above it, where the paint peeled like a scab from a summer 30 years ago. Lorraine never did change that clock. Sentimental or stubborn, hard to tell with that family. The familiar tone, the supervisory ease, the tiny cruelty of people as paperwork, Morales didn't rise to it. You told dispatch to belay on June 17th, she said, voice level. 9:03 p.m. Negative response. Copy? I have your voice on a tape the county doesn't know it owns. She watched his pupils contract, a slow little eclipse. I have your voice on another tape too, smaller, from a room where the clock died at 9:14. He didn't flinch. The good ones never flinch in conversation. They save suddenness for hands and doors. Old machines lie, he said. You know that. Wind up a rumor and it'll tick long enough to get a man killed. You paid for uniform cleaning, she continued. A rhythm now, a quiet metronome he couldn't see. Paper disposal, wood. You wrote HK beside those lines like the county was a ledger and its girls were columns you could balance. You met with Tanner when he wasn't on duty, used him to carry what you didn't want recorded, used Bishop to drive what you didn't want seen. Price ran his mouth, then he ran out of time. There's a .38 in the back of his skull that matches the caliber you signed for. He breathed that in. The storm threw a handful of rain at the house. It sounded like gravel. Walter was a risk, he said finally, and the first-person plural slipped out under the varnish. He drank, he resented, he wanted a wage nobody promised. He wasn't built for heat. His eyes lifted to the dead clock as if instinct tugged them. None of us were built for this kind of heat. What happened to Amanda? Morales asked, and she let the girl's name open a window the badges couldn't. No phrases, no management. What happened? For the first time, something old and human twitched across his face. Not remorse. Calculation is a feeling, too. Accident, he said. The syllables could have been a prayer or a policy. She bolted. They restrained her. Tape didn't come off fast enough. Panic is inefficient. Roy should have known that. He turned to the sink, to the faucet, like he needed a thing to look at that didn't look back. We protected the county from itself. It was a mean summer. Men got hot. People say things when they're frightened. Families break. Neighbors ruin neighbors. You think you want the soundbite that says sheriff saved a girl, but what you really want is a town that goes to church without looking at the second pew where a mother sits by herself. We kept the peace. Morales felt the furnace of it, that old civic lie dressed as medicine. You kept the quiet, she said. Different thing. He let his gaze slide to her, as if appraising whether she could carry the sentence he would say next. We didn't touch that girl the way you're going to write it, he said, and there it was, the reflex to edit the headline. Price panicked. Roy cleaned. Briggs carried gas and fear. Leonard drove. A small shrug. I said hold position. That's all I did. I didn't hurt anyone. I moved pieces so the board didn't flip. Pieces are people, Morales said. and she heard the way her voice tightened on the last word and let it. Lorraine mailed 30 Christmas letters to your office. You filed them. You knew. She let the ledger, the microcassette, the off-air dispatch tape, the cross with WDP carved into weathered wood, all stack quietly between them without moving a finger. Tell me where the last tape is. He breathed out through his nose, a teacher tired of a bright student. Which last tape? The one that says your names, she said. Not the initials you write when you are feeling safe. The one you're trying to fetch out of this house tonight because you know we've got the rest. The one someone hid where only a person who loved this kitchen would think to hide it. Her eyes went to the clock, not moving her head. He followed her glance because we are built to follow glances. The 914 stared back, hands frozen as if pleading time for an alibi. Outside, the idling engine gave a single cough and steadied. Her earpiece gave a breath of carrier hiss and then a soft click she'd asked for. The signal that the second car had slid into the back pasture and a third had kissed the shoulder of County Road 8 with lights off. She took one step, not toward him, not toward the door, but toward the wall like she'd remembered to turn out a light in a room that held a photograph. Funny thing about clocks, she said. Sometimes when you open them up, there's more than gears. His hand moved, not to a weapon, to the place at his belt where the old habit lived, where weight had once hung, where power taught muscle memory to reach. He caught himself and spun the instinct into a cough, into a shoulder roll, into an almost smile that said, see, calm. You shouldn't be here without a warrant, he said, and he said it like a joke, like both of them could pretend the storm made rules soft. We have one, she said, because they did. Signed an hour ago by a judge who had kept a photograph of his daughter on his desk since 1996 and had watched it brown at the edges like a leaf. And another for the office over the hardware where you keep a desk nobody sits in but you. He took a step toward her. The house announced the weight of his heel to the men in the next room. Tell me who else knows you're here, he said. I can make this. And then something outside, something heavy and sudden, spoke. A metallic thump followed by the dry hiss of a spike strip greeting a tire that thought the world owed it distance. The idling engine roared, jumped, fell, boots pounded soil. A voice with useful volume said, Sheriff's office, hands. Not a question. Kent's face didn't change. The good ones. They keep the mask until it slides. Roy never learned to leave a thing alone, he said with a note almost affectionate, and then he moved. Not to run, to intercept her path to the clock. He reached to the frame, fingers spread to pluck it off the wall like a fruit he'd left to ripen too long. Morales was already moving. The kitchen learned her stride and gave it back. Her palm kissed the clock before his did, the dead second hand nicking her glove, a tiny, invisible slash. The casing was old, the back panel held by a rusted tongue. She didn't fight it. She let gravity and angle be her allies, tilted the face down so the guts swung, then slid her fingers into the hollow where batteries should have lived and found the edge of plastic and tape. Small, black, a microcassette wrapped in a strip of cloth that smelled like somebody's lemon polish from a year that never made it into a calendar. Kent's hand closed on her wrist with a pressure that remembered handshakes and forgot mercy. The grip was precise, not rage, not panic, physics, leverage. The two uniforms were a gust away, their steps a thunder the storm absorbed. He leaned in close enough that she could smell old coffee and the oil men use on leather. You're going to put that back, he said, and the line arrived like the end of a hymn. She let him feel the smallest tremor, not fear, the knowledge of an edge under a boot. Roy, she said, lifting her voice just enough for the other room to wear it. Down. The kitchen tore open. Gloves and command filled the doorway. Kent didn't turn. Men like him don't turn to uniforms that used to answer to their schedules. He tightened, and for a breath the old county pressed both of them into a single frame, his decision about to be the last one he ever made alone. Then he chose the thing men choose when they have lived too long inside their own unchallenged voice. He held on. The arm bar that followed separated past from present with a single concise sound. He went to a knee because physics is older than politics. The bracelet clicked. The badge on his lapel scraped the cabinet and fell. A small, dull star that rolled until the storm's breath pushed it into a shadow. Outside, the second engine had already failed its tire, had already tried to run on a rim, had already learned the county can turn into a plow when it wants to stop you. Hands, the voice repeated, and another voice, worn and competent and furious at being 1994 again, answered with breath and gravel. All right. Roy Tanner's boots stopped where the wheat began. Morales stood with the clock's belly open, the tape in her hand. She didn't look at Kent as they stood him. She didn't have to. He would have the same face he wore for a ribbon cutting and a funeral, the same expression he'd used to console Lorraine beside a casserole 15 Junes ago, the same smile he wore in the framed photo with the caption 20 years of service, where he held a child at the county fair as if children were props God made to drape over forearms and trophies. The microcassette fit the deck at the lab like a tooth in a long emptied gum. They didn't listen at the house. They carried it out under rain that had learned restraint, under a sky the color of old denim, under the eyes of neighbors who opened curtains the way people lift scars to look at the seam. Bishop sat in an interview room with air that tasted of pennies and watched 2 cups of coffee cool as if time could reverse if you stared hard enough. Briggs prayed to a mirror that didn't owe him any answers. Lorraine sat with her hands on the table at home and didn't touch the ring because touching makes time move. The sound bloomed when the head engaged, a small gear whir, a breath, the kind of knock a fist makes when it has convinced itself a door will open. "Roy," a voice said, and it was Kent's voice, without the courthouse carpet under it. "Hold position." Another voice. "She's panicking." A third, cautious, eager to please because that's how he kept himself from drowning. "Bishop, we gotta move." Then the soft sound of someone breathing through tape. Then a girl saying a word you can't hear because it's hidden inside a sob. Then Kent again, unhurried, a man who has never been late for anyone who could fire him. "Enough. We'll fix it." There were names, not initials, not codes, not the ribbon of an S that could be anything if you set it down fast enough. "Roy," Kent said. "Leonard." And a minute later, the one they needed, even if the dead didn't. "Walter, stop." After that, a noise like a chair, a scrape, a new silence that wasn't absence, it was wait. The tape clicked to a stop the way a clock stops when a hand gets in the way. They didn't cheer, they didn't cry, they filed, they signed, they called the DA who had learned to keep his voice inside the room when cameras waited outside it. They printed warrants that looked like winter, stark, clean, unarguable. They walked Kent down a hallway where his picture had hung for years and watched heads rise from desks and then drop because people have to finish their shifts even when the world repaints itself while they're in the building. Tanner came in with mud up the back of his jeans and said nothing until he saw Kent and then said everything without moving his mouth. Bishop stared at the floor tile where grout had darkened a shade at the threshold and decided to try being honest for 15 minutes because it felt like breath after a long tunnel. Morales drove to Lorraine's with the tape's duplicate and a sentence that was both a gift and a blade. "We have their voices," she said in a kitchen that smelled like cumin and rain and old paper. Lorraine looked at the detective's hands, at the callus where a pen sits and the thin indentation a watch leaves. "Did she suffer?" she asked, and the world bowed slightly under the question, because this is the question everything else tries to answer without saying it. Morales told the truth as far as she could carry it. "They didn't give her air," she said softly. "It was quick. She fought." Lorraine closed her eyes, and when she opened them, there was a steadiness there that had lived inside her for 30 years, waiting for a door. "Then we will breathe for her now," she said. The headlines didn't take long to write themselves. Cold case, ex-sheriff arrested, shocked community, strange tape, names named. The courthouse steps filled with microphones like flowers that drink scandal instead of sun. Morales walked past them and gave the only statement she could live with. "This is about a girl," she said. "It has always been about a girl." Cameras don't know how to hold a sentence that simple. They went hunting for angles that would sound like victory. There wasn't one. Justice is not a soundbite. It's a ledger you try to balance knowing there are numbers you'll never see. Back at the Ray farmhouse, the storm had run out of script. Air lay heavy and clean over wheat that had been listening for decades. The dead clock hung open, a little cave of gears and absence. On the floor beneath it, the tiny screw that used to hold the back in place winked once in a slant of late light and then stopped being interesting. Evidence techs moved through the rooms with kindness in their hands, because that's a choice you can make even when your job is to measure what's left. Morales stood on the porch and let the boards tell her how many summers they had carried footsteps. Across the field, a squad car's lights turned slowly, once, like a lighthouse remembering a ship. She thought of Bishop's map with lines like veins, of a cross behind a shed, of ledger columns and off-air tapes, and a woman who copied a call because she knew men would lean over her shoulder and make her fingers lie if she let them. She thought of Kent's hand on her wrist and the exact pressure of a man who believes the county sits inside his grip. She thought of Amanda's words written before the world tightened around her. If something happens to me, it wasn't him. Who had she meant? The boy the rumors named? The father no one should have doubted? A note written to unaccuse the wrong man because she knew the right ones would never be suspected? The sentence would haunt the edges of the solved headline because truth arrives in chords, not single notes. Night gathered. The task force rooms glowed like aquariums where facts swam in loops and occasionally leapt into a net. Kent sat under a light that remembered 1,000 interviews and finally told one the room wanted. He did not confess the way television teaches people to. He arranged language around consequence and waited for a loophole to grow a door. Tanner stared at a small scab on his knuckle and picked it until it bled because control has to go somewhere when you can't exercise it on other people. Bishop signed his name 3 times under 3 statements that would keep him above ground for the first time in years because men like him think breath is a form of innocence. Briggs heard the words cooperation and substantial assistance and realized that silence had been the wrong god to worship all along. Somewhere in the lab, the ring with the letter A lay in a dish under glass, catching the white light and turning it into something softer. The chain beside it had broken and been repaired and broken again. The tech with the steady hands labeled the envelope like she was writing a prayer. On a shelf behind her, a box marked Ray, Amanda, 1994, sat lighter than it had for a week, heavier than it had for 30 years. Morales wrote until the pen left a canyon in the pad and then stopped and looked at her own handwriting as if it belonged to a witness she hadn't met. She closed her eyes and the dead clock appeared, and behind its face a little black cassette clicked once the way a heart does when it decides to keep going. She opened them and the world was still there, which is the best and worst thing it does. Tomorrow would be arraignments and affidavits in a courtroom where oak benches held the same people who had held casseroles in grief. Tomorrow would be camera booms and a DA speaking in paragraphs designed to be cut into pieces for 7 p.m. Tomorrow would be a mother on a porch with a candle and a ring and a sky that had finally learned how to be quiet without being cruel. But tonight the wheat settled, the house breathed, and a county that had mistaken silence for peace began to remember the difference. The morning of arraignments rose clean and unsentimental. A pale Texas blue pressed flat over the courthouse like a stamp. People arrived early and quiet, the way they do for weddings and funerals and anything that asks a town to look at itself. Reporters uncoiled cables and practiced solemn faces. Deputies adjusted ties with fingers that had hauled fence for decades before they ever touched a microphone. Detective Jenna Morales parked 2 blocks away and walked, letting her shoes mark the old brick in a steady beat that had carried her through the fields and the sheds and the silo and the rooms where clocks forgot their jobs. She passed the statue out front, a lawman cast in bronze with a hat cocked just so, and kept her eyes forward because irony didn't need witnesses today. Inside, the air tasted like varnish and whispered paper. The ex-sheriff waited at a defense table with wrists that remembered authority even when they wore steel. His face the same one he'd used for ribbon cuttings and Sunday fundraisers and long, slow condolences on porches he never meant to visit twice. On the other side, Roy Tanner stared at the scuffed toe of his boot as if the leather might teach him how to disappear again. Leonard Bishop sat too straight as if trying on dignity late in life. Calvin Briggs folded his hands, a parishioner asking the wrong God for mercy. The judge came in with a gavel that had outlived 2 generations of cases and more secrets than any county budget should have to hold. The clerk called names like bells, charges stacked, crisp and deliberate, murder, kidnapping, conspiracy, evidence tampering, official oppression, falsifying records. The recorded voices sat like stones on the table between law and memory. When the clerk read Harold Kent, nitrate drifted through a room that had grown up thinking power and protection were siblings. Kent's lawyer said words about service, about years, about misunderstanding. The DA spoke about tapes, ledgers, bones, the way silence has a filing system. Bail was denied because sometimes the present decides to remember what the past forgot. Outside, cameras drank the noon light. Headlines wrote themselves in fonts built for shock. Former sheriff indicted, deputy arrested, driver flips, ledger reveals ring. None of them wrote what mattered. Lorraine Ray watched on a small TV with the sound low, the captioning late to every sentence. The ring turning in her palm the way it had turned on a chain for 30 years. She waited until the room emptied, then called Morales and asked for truth instead of television. The detective drove over with a manila envelope and careful breath. They sat at the kitchen table where Kuman had outlasted grief and talked without microphones. Lorraine asked the question the news always forgets to let a mother ask. Did my daughter know she was loved when it ended? Morales told her the closest thing to yes she could carry. She pushed the envelope across. Inside, a clean copy of a single sentence from an old note in a girl's hand. If something happens to me, it wasn't him. Lorraine read it once, then again, and smiled a torn little smile that belonged to a younger year. They tried to say it was her daddy, she whispered, like she was finally allowed to tell the heir a secret. That first summer, those first people with loud mouths and empty afternoons, she brought me that note the week before. She said if anybody points the wrong way, you show them this. She looked at the ceiling like she could see all the summers layered there. He died not knowing, but he didn't carry that weight on his back to the grave. That helps. The task force didn't stop because the cameras had found their angles. Back at the lab, a new file sat under a light that had learned how to be kind. The other hair, those stray threads in the barrel, the cabin, the shed, pulled a name out of a disappearance 2 years older than Amanda's. A girl from 2 counties east who had been a poster on a drugstore door for one thin autumn, and then a box in a mother's closet. Renee Calder. The genealogical tree grew a path. Bishop's map grew a dot. At the culvert with the bent rebar, they found what time had turned into patience and clay had turned into memory. A bracelet with enamel daisies that matched a photograph. A sneaker that had outlasted tread. Bone that said young and small and fought for and unfinished. Dental records closed the loop gently because gentleness is still a choice when the truth is heavy. Morales drove to a trailer with aluminum siding that rang like rain when the wind had nothing better to do, and sat with a woman who'd been breathing a kind of careful air for 33 years. The woman listened without blinking, then took a folded thank you card from a drawer and wrote the names of strangers inside it like they were cousins she would feed if they came to dinner. She asked if the men would pay in the only currency the living keep, years. Morales said yes, as far as the law could count, and the woman nodded like that was the exchange she'd been waiting to make with the world. Pleas started moving like weather through council meetings and back hallways. Bishop made his mouth useful, drawing lines on maps, shading in rooms, naming names with a pen that trembled halfway through every capital letter. He took the deal that keeps men breathing so they can testify against the myths they lived for. Briggs followed, eyes clearing as if confession were the first honest glass of water he'd had in decades. He took conspiracy and accessory and the long leash of time to be lived under a state that would never let him forget when to check in. Tanner stared at a photograph of himself in a younger uniform until the gloss went dull under his thumbnail. He asked for a lawyer who had played ball with him in high school and got one who warned him the scoreboard didn't hang in this courtroom. He tried for manslaughter. The tape said murder. The ledger said leadership. The judge said trial. Kent didn't bargain. Or he did, but only with himself in the stubborn dark where a man builds private definitions and calls them principles. He told reporters nothing. He told his lawyer he kept the peace. He told the Mirror the county would thank him if it were brave enough. He told the tape recorder nothing because the tape recorder had already heard him when he believed no one was listening. Trial opened in a room that wanted to be a church and a theater at the same time. The jurors came in with faces they'd practiced in the car, neutral, willing, steady. The DA walked them through years with a pointer and a patience that didn't condescend. Microcassette hiss, dispatch whispers, the dead clock's second hand held up in a plastic bag like a tiny fossil, maps with arteries instead of roads, X's that felt like gravestones. Bishop said sir and ma'am so often it sounded like a life raft. He drew his roots again, this time in front of strangers. He choked on the word girl and swallowed hard and made himself say it. Briggs said I'm sorry in a way that didn't ask for anything back. He described tape and roots and a truck that smelled like fear and oil. He did not look at Lorraine until the third day, and when he did, he looked fast, like a man who touched a stove as a child and never forgot. Tanner sat still until the tape said his name, with the unhurried authority of someone who had always expected obedience. He watched himself be spoken into the room and did not move because he finally understood momentum. Kent's lawyer tried to pull teeth from paper and make the words chew differently. He held up a career like a shield. He called character witnesses who remembered parades and forgot nights. Then the state played the part where a girl's breath hit cotton and a man said, enough, we'll fix it. And the room learned that character is what you do when the clock stops. Lorraine took the stand last because the ledger of suffering always pays out at the end. She did not cry. She let the jury see what 30 years does to a posture when a woman decides not to break in public. She told them about a stubborn clock, a Christmas letter mailed every year like a duty and a prayer, a daughter who wrote her a sentence to carry like a talisman. She held the ring between finger and thumb and let it flash once when the light found it. You can put men in cells, she said, and I hope you do, but I want you to do something else too. I want you to put the quiet in one. The courtroom didn't know how to record that, but it tried. Verdicts came down like clean rain after a long choking summer. Bishop. Guilty to conspiracy, accessory after the fact, sentenced under a deal that turned his breath into testimony scheduled on calendars for months to come. Briggs, guilty to conspiracy, evidence tampering, a term that would teach him how long days are when a clock is honest. Tanner, guilty to murder and kidnapping, and the particular crime of pretending protection is a tool you can use to move people where you want them. Kent, guilty on all counts that mattered and a few that mattered because history would need the footnotes. The judge spoke sentences that sounded like numbers and years, and also like a county that had finally decided to know itself. When the bailiff asked if there was anything further, the DA said one word, no, and meant enough. Paperwork swarmed, as it always does when justice breathes. The task force had exit meetings in which they practiced the art of ending. Evidence rooms were audited until every label sat square and every box knew where it slept. Dispatch installed a second recorder because 1 is a wish and 2 is a system. The sheriff's office put a bulletin board in the lobby with 12 faces that had been paper for too long and wrote dates under them like promises. A classroom at the academy hosted a lecture titled Silence and Policy with slides of tape decks and clocks and faces that believed they were the weather. Morales stood at the back and watched new deputies learn the difference between quiet and peace. The Ray farmhouse changed by not changing. The dead clock went to the lab and then to a box and then to a shelf where it would outlast more badges. Lorraine kept the kitchen table because wood learns the shape of elbows in grief and it would be wrong to throw that out. A bench appeared by the fence line because people in small towns make benches when they cannot make time go backwards. Folks came by with casseroles like they were late to a party without balloons. Some left notes. Some took their hats off and didn't know where to put them. One afternoon, the retired dispatcher who had kept the off-air tape came by with a new wall clock in a cardboard sleeve. "Battery in a drawer," she said, setting it down without ceremony. "You can start it when you want, or never." Lorraine smiled and shook her head and slid the box under the sink. Not yet. Not today. Morales returned alone on a windless evening that made the fields look like a photograph. She leaned on the porch rail and listened to the county breathe. The case file lived on a hard drive now, copied and backed up and locked and duplicated until losing it would take a hurricane. The names on the ledger would age in uniforms with numbers sewn inside. The ring would travel only as far as a chain and a hand and a heart. She thought about Amanda's sentence. If something happens to me, it wasn't him, and how it had done 2 things at once, cleared the wrong man and pointed at the terrible habit of towns to aim blame at the nearest grief. She thought about Renee's daisies. She thought about Price's cross behind the shed, and about men who clean instead of confess, and about a woman who taped calls because she knew the day would come when someone asked for proof the wind had spoken. She let the quiet settle, the right kind, the kind that doesn't hide anything. When the sun quit politely and the first crickets began to tune themselves, she took the microcassette's duplicate from her pocket and held it like a matchbook. She wasn't playing it. She was just confirming that weight has memory. She pictured future hearings, future appeals, future rooms where the truth would need to be played again for ears that had chosen not to listen the first time. She pictured new cases and newer faces and the same old math of power and proximity and who gets believed. She pictured herself older, still walking careful through rooms where time had opinions. Then she slipped the tape back into her coat and watched a single light come on in Lorraine's kitchen. A woman moved through it, shoulders squared, hands steady, like someone who had learned to breathe for 2. The town did not heal in a montage. There were bad nights. There were debates in diners about who knew what and when, and whether knowledge shared a roof with guilt. There were men who retired early and left without lunches, and women who apologized to other women in the frozen aisle near the peas. But there were also small mercies that had been waiting for a green light, a bus stop where no one avoided eye contact, a school hallway where a photo came down because its subject had finally been named correctly, a door in a county office that no one closed during conversations anymore. People learned the cost of unasked questions and began asking some. Not all, enough to change the weather. On the anniversary of the day the clock quit, the county did a thing it was not very good at. It gathered without barbecue or campaign signs. Someone set up a microphone and didn't use it much. Lorraine walked out to the field with a candle in a glass and set it on the ground where the grass had learned the shape of footsteps long ago. Morales stood 10 steps back because proximity is a responsibility. The wind pressed its cheek to the wheat and then left it alone. A boy read the names of girls and a woman corrected his pronunciation gently when he stumbled, because accuracy is a kindness. The crowd didn't clap. It did something better. It stayed quiet in the way the living mean when they say quiet, not the hush that power buys, the silence that grief chooses so it can hear itself and decide to keep going. When it was done, when the candles had burned their hour and the sky had traded blue for something generous, Morales walked past the bench by the fence line and put her palm on the rail like you do when you want wood and blood to have a conversation. She looked at the house and thought of clocks and tapes and the long ledger of a place that had redefined its nouns, justice and peace and neighbor and sheriff and daughter and witness. She didn't feel triumph. She felt gravity doing its job, pulling what had floated, lies, fear, rumor, back to ground where it could be named and measured. She stepped off the porch and into the light that was left and let the day close behind her, Not with a headline, not with applause, just with the soft mechanical certainty of a door that knows where it belongs.